Good evening, everyone. City Council is now in session. Please stand for the invocation by Councilman Rector, which will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
We thank you for the opportunity to gather this evening in your presence to serve the citizens of this great city of Suffolk that we are all proud to call home. Help us as we navigate our way through the issues that are before us this evening. We choose to look at matters that have the potential to divide us more as opportunities for solutions that bring us together. As we watch events unfold around the world, we were reminded of just how fortunate we are to live in this country. Separated by oceans, we remain, for the most part, untouched by the wars and violence that seem to encompass so much of the rest of the planet. We may live in troubled times, but troubled times have been with us in the past and will be with us in the future. To quote Eric Greitens, the former governor of Missouri, "No one escapes pain, fear, and suffering. Yet from pain can come wisdom, from fear can come courage, from suffering can come strength if we have the virtue of resilience." Here at home, we pray for all of our first responders. They are the ones that help bring order out of chaos, restore safety from danger, and begin the healing and recovering process for those in need. While we are safe here at home, we pray for the safety of our men and women that serve and protect us from the many threats that exist away from our shores. We send our prayers out particularly to their families here at home who live day to day with the fear that comes from knowing their loved ones in harm's way are protecting the freedoms that we hold so dear. We continue to be the envy of the world and the place that many would love to be able to call home. Finally, as we celebrated what would have been Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 95th birthday, I would like to offer this quote from him. "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." All of this we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Rector, for that moving invocation. The Freedom of Information Act certification is required at this time. Madam Clerk, please present the resolution for consideration.
A resolution certifying the closed meeting of January 17, 2024, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3712. Now therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Suffolk hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of Virginia law, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the City Council of the City of Suffolk in the closed meeting.
Council, a motion be in order. Councilman Fawcett.
So moved, Mayor.
Got a motion for approval of Councilman Fawcett. Councilman Johnson.
Second.
Second from Councilman Johnson. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
The motion is approved by a vote of 7-0.
We'll now move to approval of the minutes from the October 18th, 2023 and November 1st, 2023 work sessions and regular meetings, and a motion would be in order. Councilman Williams.
So moved.
Got a motion for approval from Councilman Williams. Councilman Rector. We have a second from Councilman Rector. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your votes. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
Motion is approved by a vote of 7-0.
At this time, we will consider the removal of items from the consent agenda and adoption of the entire agenda as presented. Removal of any item from the consent agenda would only be necessary if any member of City Council wishes to vote on a specific item separately, and a motion would be required. Questions and requests for information on specific agenda items can be addressed during the consideration of the consent agenda after the agenda speakers. Additionally, City Manager Moore has information regarding public hearing item number 11. Mr. Manager, please provide City Council with an overview.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, staff is in receipt of a written request from the applicant's agent to defer item 11, CUP 2023-018, for 90 days, which would place it on City Council's April 17th, 2024 regular session meeting. The following are the specifics. Item 11 is a public hearing to consider An ordinance to grant a conditional use permit to establish a solar energy facility on property located on Hosier Road, zoning map 45, parcels 5, 5A, 6, 7, 7A, 7B, 7C, and 7D. Account numbers 050648000, 053280700, 05175200, 05113100, 05269100, 051843,000, 05113000, and 05175100, CUP 2023-018. At this time, I would ask City Council's consideration of a motion to defer item 11 from this evening's agenda until April 17, 2024 City Council meeting, and to adopt the remainder of the agenda as presented.
Okay, before we move forward, I erred at the beginning of the meeting and forgot to mention, as you can see, that Councilmember Butler Barlow is not here, and she has been excused. So with that being said, in regards to the agenda, just for clarity, anyone who is in attendance tonight regarding public hearing item number 11, note that the city manager has advised that the applicant has requested the city council continue consideration of this item to the April 17, 2024 city council meeting. Therefore, a motion would be in order at this time to amend the agenda to defer consideration of public hearing item number 11 to the April 17, 2024 city council meeting, and to adopt the remainder of the agenda as presented. Councilman Fawcett.
Mayor, if we could, I do not want to defer item number 11. I'd like to accept the agenda as it's been presented, and that number 11 go forward to be heard publicly tonight.
So we did not have a motion and a second from that, but I believe we have to address the original motion first, and if that's defeated, then we can ask for a substitute motion, or if that motion's
That
made
is
and seconded.
That is the original motion that's on the floor, because what had been mentioned by the manager was entertaining a motion, but no one has so moved it. So the motion on the floor would be to adopt the agenda as written.
Okay, so we have no one to make the motion to amend, to approve the agenda with the amendment at this time. Okay, so without hearing that, then we have a motion from Councilman Fawcett to approve the agenda as originally presented without the amendment.
Correct.
And do we have and Councilman Bennett?
I second it.
We have a second from Councilman Bennett. Is there any discussion of the motion? Okay, hearing none. Council members, prepare to vote, and you are voting on approving the agenda in its original form, which would be to hear item number 11 this evening.
Correct.
Okay, council members, prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
The motion is approved by a vote of 6-1, with Mayor Duman voting in opposition.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have any agenda speakers? And if so, please explain the guidelines.
We do not have any agenda speakers this evening.
Hearing none, please present the items for consideration.
Consent agenda item number 7, an ordinance to accept and appropriate funds from the Virginia Port Authority for the Route 460 Improvements Project. Consent agenda item number 8, an ordinance to accept and appropriate a V-Stop Reduction in Domestic Violence Grant from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services. Consent agenda item number 9, an ordinance to accept and appropriate additional funds from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services for the 5th Judicial District Community Corrections Program.
Mr. Manager, please provide an overview of the items.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, item 7 is an ordinance to accept and appropriate $1 million from the Virginia Port Authority for the design of road improvements to Route 460 and its intersection with US 58 bypass. Adoption of this ordinance will increase the revenues and expenditures of the fiscal year 2023-2024 capital fund budget by $1 million. As part of the FY 2023-2024 capital projects fund budget, $1 million in local funding was approved. In regards to item 8, the city has received funding in an amount of $113,300 from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services in support of the Violence Against Women Reduction and Domestic Violence Program. The funding will be used to assist with the salary as a full-time prosecutor within the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Adoption of this ordinance will increase the revenues and expenditures of the Consolidated Grants Fund budget by the $113,300. There is a local cash match in the amount of $37,766, which is available in the Consolidated Grants Fund. In regards to item 9, the city has received funding in the amount of $11,464 from the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services. The funding will be used for salary increases of the Community Corrections Program grant-funded staff for fiscal year 2023-2024. Adoption of this ordinance will increase the revenues and expenditures of the Consolidated Grants Fund budget by the $11,464. There is no local match.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. If there are no questions about the items, a motion would be in order to approve the consent agenda as presented. Councilman Fawcett,
Move to approve as presented.
got a motion for approval, Councilman Fawcett, Councilman Rector.
Second.
Second from Councilman Rector. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
Councilmember Rector, can you please cast your vote? Thank you. The motion is approved by a vote of 7-0.
We do have several public hearings this evening. Our first one is an ordinance to grant a conditional use permit to amend the previously approved conditions pertaining to the establishment of a bed and breakfast on property located at 231 Pinner Street, zoning map 34G18A, parcel 154, account number 35244100. This is CUP 2023-21. Mr. Manager, please provide an overview.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Kevin Wine, Director of Planning and Community Development, will provide the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, as the mayor outlined, this is a request to amend an existing conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast located at 231 Pinner Street. Specifically, what they are requesting amendment of to the conditional use permit they received roughly 4 years ago is to expand the bed and breakfast offerings from 2 guest rooms to 5 guest rooms, as well as having an inside cafe that would be internal to the bed and breakfast on the first floor of the primary structure, and to allow for special events that will be open to the public. The property is zoned RM. It is in close proximity to downtown, but it is zoned RM. That's our residential medium zoning district. It's also in our local historic conservation overlay district. It's surrounded by residential homes, zoned RM as well, along that Pinner Street block. The property features a 3-story residential house. It currently operates as a bed and breakfast. There are various outbuildings located on the western portion of the property, which includes a detached 2-story framed garage, a small framed building with a covered porch to the north, and a winery stage to the east. The cafe is currently operating out of a food truck on the premises with a temporary use permit issued by the city back in February of 2023. Here you have the existing conditions associated with the previous, or the existing conditional use permit, rather, CUP 2018-17. So I'll walk you through quickly what they're looking to amend. We've highlighted the areas, but this would amend Condition 1, which speaks to 2 guest rooms. That would change to 5 as proposed. Additionally, the accessory uses of private parties and similar activities to be only hosted by bed and breakfast guests, that would be modified to allow all the public to operate activities there as well. And number 6, as it exists on the screen here, limits meals being served on the site to registered guests only. Being a bed and breakfast in the city, provided that it is conditioned as a part of the approval, they can open up and offer meals to those that are not registered guests as well. So that's what they're looking to amend. Lastly, number 12 here states that no events open to the public without a permit are a change in zoning. This amendment would eliminate that as well. Here you have a floor plan of the use, a site plan rather. The proposed cafe would be indoors and would not really have much impact on the surrounding neighbors, as demonstrated by the food truck there currently. The use for receptions and private parties and similar activities was previously approved, and the additional request to include special events that would be available to the public is not anticipated to present any adverse effects. The previous conditions restricted only guests to hosting gatherings as an accessory use to the bed and breakfast. However, this would allow for gatherings and special events to be open to the public and B&B guests as well. The property is located within the residential zoning district and is surrounded by residential uses. However, the subject property is located within walking distance of the central downtown area, which consists of a variety of commercial uses. The location of the property, one being in the historic district in downtown, it benefits from the existing infrastructure there, such as sidewalks and parking that would assist in supporting the special events and the cafe use as proposed. The site does have 25 parking spaces on site, which is ample enough to serve the uses. And I'll touch on this, but they do have a shared parking agreement with a large parking lot operator down the street. This is the floor plan. The highlighted areas indicate the dining room areas that will support the cafe counter, which is also highlighted on this. Here you can see a close-up of those parking spaces on site. As stated, there are plenty of parking on site to support the use. We did have a concern about the open to the public gatherings, and they have presented us with a shared parking agreement that will allow them to use the existing parking lot at North Main and Finney Avenue. There is a sidewalk connection to this property along Finney Avenue, and they have permission to utilize 20 spaces on Friday and Saturdays and an additional 10 spaces in this parking lot during the week. Staff has evaluated this conditional use permit against the criteria within the UDO for the issuance of the conditional use permit, and we've concluded that it can operate in a fashion compatible with the uses established within the neighborhood, and we recommend its approval. The Planning Commission at their meeting, December 19th, 2023, voted 4-3 to approve a resolution that recommends approval of this application to you all with the conditions as presented. That concludes my presentation on this item. I'll be happy to stand by at the conclusion of the public hearing to address any concerns.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wine. Before we open the public hearing, Madam Clerk, please explain the timing system.
This is a public hearing, and each speaker is asked to provide their name and their address. We will have a 10-minute period for the proponents, a 15-minute period for those in opposition, and then an additional 5 minutes for rebuttal.
This is a public hearing. Will the first speaker please come forward and provide their name and address, and that is to speak in favor of this ordinance.
My name is Melody Brown. My home address is 332 Wimbledon Chase in Chesapeake, and I'm the owner of Cafe Divina. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members, thank you for hearing me today and for considering my proposal. For the last 8 months, Cafe Divina, a coffee bar and creperie trailer, has been open to the public and serving under a temporary use permit at the Pinner House Boutique Bed and Breakfast. It has been a pleasure serving this community, and we have received overwhelming support from them. So much so that within 8 weeks of our opening in May, we knew we were outgrowing the serving space on a small trailer, and we found it challenging to accommodate as many people who came to enjoy the cafe. It is an honor to be part of an ever-growing restaurant scene in downtown. I believe Cafe Divina will have a part to play in the impressive revitalization efforts happening within our city. The expansion of Cafe Divina's operations from a mobile food trailer to a cafe inside the Pinner House will create opportunities for B&B guests and cafe patrons to enjoy exceptional food, engage with the gorgeous property and the history behind it, and even learn about the art form that is making craft coffee. We have had a collectively positive response within the neighborhood and a general excitement to have a coffee house and creperie within walking distance. In addition to the establishment, the addition of this establishment within the proximity of downtown would promote a walkable and safe community, create a small win within a thriving downtown economy, and create the addition of other entrepreneurs to take up residency in vacant storefronts. This is all in addition to the positive impact the Pinner House has had in the community for the last 4 years. I would like to thank our neighbors and our regulars and my staff for being present today to give their input. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have our next speaker to speak in favor. Do we have anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak in favor of this ordinance?
Good evening. My name is Courtney Hayes, and I live at 714 North Broad Street. I would like to speak on behalf of Cafe Divina as a new grad nurse in the community. I, all through nursing school in the community of Suffolk, was always looking for places to go and study, grab a coffee, and that was never really an option for me in my time in school. I was always driving outside of Suffolk to go and find a place, and since Cafe Divina has opened, it is such an awesome way to bring the older generation and the younger generation as a place to go and study, just grab coffee, and really bring the community together. And I think it really has the great value and input to revitalize Suffolk and bring everyone together in that way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have our next speaker to speak in favor of this ordinance.
My name is Cassidy Hayes, and I live at 714 North Broad Street here in Suffolk. As a small business owner here in Suffolk, I would like to speak on behalf of Cafe Divina. It's a perfect space to have other small businesses come and collaborate with small events. As well as that, I think it's just an awesome opportunity to bring in people from all over Hampton Roads here to Suffolk. And like Courtney said, it's a great way to help revitalize Suffolk and bring people to the downtown area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have our next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Michaela Parnan. Sorry, I lost my voice, by the way. I live at 105 Highfield Road in Suffolk, Virginia. And I appreciate history more than anything, and I love that it's bringing back that old Suffolk history and appreciating it and combining the different pieces of history with a place to socialize and a positive environment for all the city to enjoy. So I enjoy that more than anything. And it's always good people, and there's so much to do there and so much to look at. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have our next speaker to speak in favor. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this ordinance?
Hello, I'm Dory Stoley. I'm at 1113 Pine Valley Drive, and I'm new to Suffolk, so I've been exploring, and I've been trying out the dining establishments, cultural attractions, the library, love the library, and have found many wonderful places. One thing that I did feel was sadly lacking was a really nice coffee spot. And I was delighted to discover Cafe Divina. It serves wonderful coffee. It's a great place to gather. I've brought friends over there, and I would love to see, to be able to go there for other events. It has this really beautiful outdoor space, and I think it would be added attraction to Suffolk in addition to the other many wonderful attractions. Thank you.
Thank you. Have our next speaker, please. Speak in favor.
Good evening. My name is Michael Wiltshire. I live at 1245 Westover Avenue, Norfolk, Virginia, just over the water. But my wife works at Cafe Divina as one of the lovely baristas there. Very lovely, in fact. But I'm biased. I noticed that some young people were basically the first to speak. But I also kind of wanted to emphasize that every once in a while, my wife comes home and tells me a story about these old ladies that gather and play bridge in the cafe, and it's really like lovely. It's a very lovely little story, like of just cross-generational gatherings in a space that is meant for everybody, and is open to the public, and is safe for everyone, and doesn't cross any boundaries or play loud music or anything like that. It's just for everyone. And so I just wanted to kind of bring up an image of that for you all tonight and end it there. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have our next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Megan Mansfield. I live at 1002 Island Park Circle in Suffolk, Virginia. I'm also a small business owner, and I am on a board as the treasurer here in Suffolk as well. I am super excited for Cafe Divina. I think it's a great opportunity, as someone already mentioned, for people to get together and collaborate. Also, I recently just met a friend there who's a small business owner as well, and we got together, we collaborated, we were making plans for this year in both of our small businesses and how we want to, I guess, evolve and make an impact in Suffolk. So it was a great opportunity for us to get really good, delicious coffee and something to eat, and then talk about our future plans for our businesses. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please. Do you have anyone else present who'd like to speak in favor of this ordinance?
Hello, my name is Kristen Henson, and I live at 1237 River Road. I have been tight with Mel and Chris for years, back from when they did events before Cafe Divina existed in anything. And Cafe Divina and Pinner House in general are so important to downtown, especially with the revitalization that we're trying to do. It is like, I'm trying not to repeat what everybody else said without saying like clapping or anything, because everything was so great and so true. But all in all, it's just a great place to come together, to get the creativity going, to revitalize downtown, and there are no complaints. Like Suffolk has started to become known, like, oh, Cafe Divina, that's in downtown Suffolk. And that's such a good thing to like start bringing life back to downtown Suffolk, and I can't wait to see what they do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have our next speaker, please. Is there anyone else present who would like to speak in favor of this ordinance? Hearing none, we'll now move to opposition speakers. Do we have anyone present who would like to speak in opposition to this ordinance?
Good afternoon, Mayor Duman, Vice Mayor Ward, members of council. My name is Amos Riddick, and I reside at 230 Penner Street in Suffolk. I'm before you tonight to ask that you table this decision, and my reason for asking that is that I want this decision to be made in a full and truthful decision. And my reason for stating that is I've been a member of Old Town Suffolk for 30 years. I live directly across from the bed and breakfast. And one of my reasons for asking y'all to table this event is parking. They have the space, I agree, they have the space, but all their guests, I guess, don't know that, and they are parked directly in front of my house. Some park and block my driveway, some double park. I have spoken to Mr. Brown in reference to that, and we had a gentleman to come over with a U-Haul truck parked directly in front of my house, and I told him, I said, hey, Mr. Brown, I got to get out in a little bit to go pick up some picnic tables. I can't see to get past this truck. Could you ask the gentleman to move? Went in the house, changed clothes, come back, the truck was still there. Went on about my business, come back, the truck was moved. He came over later and stated that I asked him to move, and he told me it was public parking. True, I've had that to happen to me. He had some parking spaces. He had parking spaces that'll be free, and some of his guests will come up and park in front of my house. I don't have a problem with that until I expect the guests and there's nowhere to park for them. And when I come up to some of his guests, say, hey, you going over to the coffee shop, he got parking in the yard. It's public parking. I turn around, go in the house. But my reason for asking you once again is to address this parking issue. And as council know, the Penner Street corridor is becoming a busy corridor. And when the train comes, everybody divert to Penner Street. And when this city government closed down at 5, everybody divert to Penner Street to get out of Suffolk. It's a busy corridor. And I think that we can accommodate the coffee shop and the bed and breakfast, but we got to think smart about the residents in the area. And like I said, my reason for sending it back to planning would be that they address the parking issues, and to the effect that you can make Pearl to Finney resident parking only. You know, I mean, that could be one scenario that they could address, but give them a chance to do a true and full assessment before y'all make a vote. And my next reason for speaking and asking y'all to table this event, that Mr. Brown, since he been there, it was a bed and breakfast, and every year or every 2 years, he coming up to amend this and to add on more. And I mean, it's smart business, but it's a residential neighborhood too. And now it's done went from a 2 to a 5 to a 20 guests to a 40 guests to an 80 guests. I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean, give planning time to think that out too. Then you're taking on new businesses within the bed and breakfast. I mean, where do you draw the line on that? How do you draw the line on that? I mean, give planning a fair amount of time to make the adjustment. Bring it back before you guys, but I mean, count up the cost. We in that area this year alone, we had 4 houses that went up for sale. One on east side of the bed and breakfast. I think 237 has been bought by one of Suffolk businessmen. Who's to say that he's not going to come in and want to join in with the bed and breakfast and make that a guest house for the residents? I mean, where do you draw the line? The other side of the house, too, I think that's used to be the Faircloth property. That's still open, still for sale. Then we had 2 houses on the other side of the street that were for sale, and they're closed, but the area being zoned for resident and business, hey, that's inviting more. And I don't want it to become the old town business district instead of the old town, neighborhood. I mean, these are things that we have to think about. I have no, animosity to them trying to run a business, but I live there too. And like you gentlemen, when you go home, you want to go home to relax and you want peace and quiet. You don't want to go home and, you got a limousine parked out there, you got somebody parked in front of there, and I mean, these are areas I think that should be addressed before we vote on approving, or do we modify some things, or where do we draw the line? And that's all I'm asking. And I thank y'all for listening.
Thank you, sir. We have our next speaker to speak in opposition. Do we have anyone else present who would like to speak in opposition to this ordinance? Hearing none, we'll now move to a 5-minute rebuttal period. If any one of the proponents would like to have an opportunity for rebuttal, now is the time.
Good evening, Councilman. My name's Alan Brown, and I'm the owner, one of the owners of the Pinner House, along with my wife, Chris. And I would like to thank Mr. Artis for coming and voicing his concerns. And I do remember that conversation when a truck pulled up in front of his driveway, and I was trying to locate the owner and get them to move, and I apologized to him. And I have some solutions to the problem, and I think part of the problem is because the food truck was parked close to our driveway to accommodate utilities, and sometimes people would look down the driveway and not know that they could drive down there because there might be people standing close to the driveway. So when the cafe is moved inside, that problem will not be there anymore. Also, I've had some parking signs printed up and wanted to install those in front of the house to direct people to park on our property. So I think at some point a couple customers maybe did not know that we had adequate parking. So that's another solution that we have. We want to be good neighbors to all of our neighbors. We want to be able to get along with everyone in the community, just, if we have a business there or not. We've been there for over 30 years, and we appreciate everyone that lives on Pinner Street. Pinner Street is mixed use. It has businesses on every block of Pinner Street. So I don't think we are doing anything out of the norm. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak in rebuttal? Is there anyone else present who would like to speak in rebuttal to this ordinance? Hearing no additional speakers, this public hearing is now closed. Council, an ordinance has been presented for consideration. Questions, comments, or a motion? Councilman Richter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember when we moved the business that I was working for from the Berkeley section of Norfolk to the old airplane building on Loomis Road. The then city manager, Selena Cuffey Glenn, introduced the resolution for our conditional use permit by telling the mayor at that time, Linda Johnson, that what we have here is a happy story. I'd like to echo that thought by saying what we have here tonight is definitely a happy story. We devote a tremendous amount of effort and resources to encourage people and businesses to invest in our historic downtown area. The owners of the Pinner House Bed and Breakfast have invested in our downtown and have established a very successful enterprise. They are now coming back to us not because they are struggling and need to change their business model, but rather they are coming back before us because they are successful and need to make these improvements to better serve not only the folks that come in from out of town, but also the many folks that have come to enjoy a fresh cup of coffee and a crepe And I think based on the number of people that have come up and spoken that don't live even anywhere near the downtown area that have been enjoying a cup of coffee and a crepe at the Pinner House speaks to how well they're doing. And then, it's mornings like what we have today and we're going to have for the next few days that demonstrate the need to be able to serve the folks inside rather than outside. A few meetings ago, we discussed the downtown master plan, and I described our downtown as looking at the night sky out in the country. I said that what we have in the downtown are many bright stars. The work that has been done to make the Pinner House what it is today is definitely one of those bright stars. And then with that, I would like to offer a motion to approve CUP 2023-021.
Okay, we've got a motion for approval from Councilman Rector, Councilman Fawcett.
If I could make a couple of comments first, Mayor, I would appreciate it. First off, I want to echo out that I'm absolutely thrilled of the young folks that came up here and spoke in favor of it. That's where we're going in this country. The younger folks are going to establish some things and get some things going, such as businesses in the downtown. And I echo Mr. Rector's comments being a happy story. I can remember going to the Pinner House for a tour and a ribbon cutting, I believe, back when they first got started. Very impressed with the whole operation. I'll be the first to tell you, I love a bed and breakfast. They're all over the country, and they're just usually very unique in what they do. And the Pinner House is one of those in Suffolk that's a gem, really. And I understand I don't want to take away from the gentleman that came up about the parking on the street. I appreciate him coming up. I think that Mr. Brown came up and echoed that he has some plans to try to mitigate any problems with his facility impeding and parking in front of the residents across the street or in front of their driveways. If it's all possible that when you have a big event, you've got an overflow lot that you can go to, and whoever's the coordinator that's running that particular venue could be sure that there's good directions to where they can go overflow and park. I think you have adequate parking inside to accommodate most of the residents that you're going to have. And I think that this is a thing that we need in our downtown. This is where we're trying to go. We're trying to revitalize some areas of the downtown, and we're working on this from a lot of angles. And the Pinner House is really a part of that process. I mean, they've done a great job there. They've grown a good business, and I truly think that this is a win-win for everybody. I'm sure it'll work itself all through. I can't find any reason to not support this. I am in full support of this, and I give Mr. Rector a second on that. And I want to thank the Browns for coming up and presenting this tonight, asking for this assistance, and I want to thank each and every one of you that are in the audience that have come out to support them. This is a big deal, and this is a good night for them, and I have every hope that this is going to pass and that we can move this along. And thank you for wanting to be in the downtown, and thank you for doing what you do where you're at and all the things you have done and will do. So with that, I say thank you.
Okay, we got a second from Councilman Fawcett, Vice Mayor Ward.
Yes, Mr. Amawine, come up for a second or so.
Mr. Warren.
Could you show me again where that additional parking that is around the corner, or where is that? They said additional free parking.
So here you have the subject property that's starred there, and within about 200 feet here, you have the off-site parking at the corner of Finney and North Main Street that is utilized by the First Baptist Church of Suffolk.
And right now, they have how many spaces, parking space?
They have 25 spaces on site.
But additional with that church is like?
So they have They can utilize 20 spaces on Friday and Saturdays on the church's parking lot, 20 additional spaces, bringing it to 45, with the ability to increase that to 55 over all spaces that they can utilize on weekdays. So that would be 30 spaces that they can utilize on the church's property and 25 on their property.
Okay, I don't know. Most likely when they having events, they will put something out there. They got events going on or event going on for the residents would know, or they know they could park limited places or anything like that?
That would be a question for the applicant there.
Okay.
But I can say from a zoning perspective, since they've been doing events there, we've not received any complaints that I'm aware of in our department as it related to parking or the B&B use.
But when it came to planning, I see was they moved from 1 to 5 rooms and stuff like that. What was given to planning at a particular time? Any changes or exactly what we have? Or when they change, they want to expand?
So the changes are being presented to you this evening. It would increase the guest rooms from 2 guest rooms to 5 guest rooms. It would allow for the restaurant to operate interior to the bed and breakfast use, and it would also allow for events to be held on site that that are not necessarily initiated by registered guests. It would
So
be open
planning
to the
didn't
public.
get that opportunity to hear that?
Yes, they did. They did. They heard all of that and recommended for you all's approval 4-3.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Bennett?
Thank you. While you're there, I just have a question. On the parking, is it where that on Penn Street that we can put a time, 2 hours parking for non-residents or something, wherein that you're not taking all the spaces if somebody want to park there for the residents? Is anything can be done to limit the time?
I believe that's an option. Ultimately, I think that's a city council action.
Mr. Manager?
I would think limiting parking to 2 hours short of, other than residents, I mean, you would have to have a mechanism to be able to understand who is a resident and who isn't a resident. So I don't know if that would be really an effective mode there. I might defer to
some
the
areas
chief
they usually have a
little bit
sticker.
on enforcement of a 2-hour parking in an area where you wouldn't enforce it on residents. Is that any way you can enforce that?
We can enforce 2-hour parking as long as it's marked parking, yes.
But if determining between a resident and non-resident,
How would we make that determination? 2 hours, if it's marked 2 hours, 2 hours, it's 2 hours.
Mr. Manager, currently we do have some 2-hour parking in the city, but it is unrestricted. So when it is a 2-hour zone, it is a 2-hour zone to everyone. Thus far, we do not have any residential zones like some other cities do. We do not have any type of program of that nature at this point in time.
Okay, I was thinking in terms of a resident will have a sticker that identify they're a resident.
Yes, sir. So like I said, there are some other cities around us that have similar programs as you're describing. And again, it is a pretty significant program that you've got to set up. We've got to get your stickers in place. You've got to get all the signage in place. Got to get everybody educated. So it's not that it can't be done, but we do not currently have any of those anywhere in our city.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Ward?
Well, I want to say this here. Mr. Riddick, only thing he complained about was the parking. So is that one of the things, he's been there 30 years, and for a person just complaining about the parking, is anything we can do to make him feel satisfied or what? You know, I'm just saying because what I see you have events, and I've seen the place, and it's this nice place, and we all agree about with that. But what happened when you have a wedding, 100, 200 people? I mean, parking is cars. So I just want to, you know, is there anything we can do to at least have things in a way that we already prepare for the business to grow. I mean, somebody come up there, and I live in the community, and all of a sudden something come there, and you gotta ask about your parking space. That's not a great thing.
You want to ask Mr. Brown how many people?
Yeah, if you want to come up, you can come up.
Mr. Brown, if you'd like to come up.
I mean, well, one conversation sometimes don't solve the problem. How you doing, sir?
Right, yes, parking is definitely a concern of ours, and like I said, we don't want to cause any type of parking problem, so we limit our weddings to 60 guests, and we require them to have valet parking from our lot to the church parking lot. So we try the best that we can to keep any parking off the street. And we've also informed all of our employees to tell any customers, if they see them park on the street to pull into to our yard. So we always try to make the parking as smooth as possible.
Well, as a businessman, I feel that you want to try to be a good business person. I understand that, but what I'm saying, what Mr. Riddick is talking about, that's in front of his house, his driveway. You go out and come back, the same person is there. It got to be some type of working together with that, because even if you was there and you recognize that,
Yeah, that we did have that one time. We had an incident where a car was blocking his driveway, and I tried to find the owner and get him to move before Mr. Riddick, but Mr. Riddick pulled out of his driveway before I found him and got him to move, but I did get him to move the vehicle. But that was an isolated incident.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Johnson?
First off, I'd just like to start off by saying my wife and I do bed and breakfast. That's what we do wherever we go. Parking is a problem at every bed and breakfast I've ever been to. But guess what? The bed and breakfast is worth the parking problem. In this case, I sympathize with Mr. Riddick as far as the parking goes, but I feel like I've kind of grown up with the Browns over there. They have been working on that house. It's not another person in this city or couple in this city that has put the time, effort, and love into a place in the city. And we are very, 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 very fortunate to have them there. I wish we had 6 of them on Pinner Street, no hard feelings. The conversation is that maybe we don't want small business, but guys, I want small business. If we're going to make it a successful street and make us a successful city, which is what we're voting for right now, hopefully we're going to blow this thing out of the water and keep on going. There's going to be parking problems, and we talk about parking all over the city, but that's not a reason to deny this request. This request is the next step for these folks to move up. We're going from 2 bedrooms to 5, no big deal. They need to have 5 bedrooms because they're booking up that much, so you got 3 more vehicles. The parking on the grounds, from my perspective, is pretty phenomenal to have 25 spaces. Now, is there not going to be more problems on the street? Probably. I mean, that's something we have to work with and maybe come up with a system that we can make it a better place. But I just want to thank these folks for what they've done. A cafe makes perfect sense as well. We might have to look at it again if the problems come forward. But at this point, I see no reason at all that we should deny this request. This is exactly in line with what we're trying to do in our city, to promote down. I don't even live downtown, guys, but this is what I want to see happen in our city. And let's give people places like this to come to. So with that, I say thank you, and let's move forward. Thank you.
Councilman Williams?
Yes, actually, I have a question for Mr. Brown. If you could come up, please. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Mr.
And thank you for investing in our city.
Thank you.
My question is, and I just want to understand what you said earlier. You said that during the special events or any large events, that you would put out some type of signage that would indicate that there's additional parking and not to park on the street. Is that what you said?
Well, actually, I have the signs made, and I want to permanently put them in front. We have columns in front of our house and a column on each side of the driveway. I wanted to put parking with an arrow on that column to alert people when they come down the street to pull into the property and park and not park on the street. But we also do have, the valet, they put signs out when we do have a wedding that, to pull in, and then they valet the cars to First Baptist.
Okay. Mr. Wines, got a question. As Mr. Brown had just indicated that he wanted to put out some type of permanent signs, can he put out permanent signs?
He's entitled to put locational signage on his property to direct traffic and circulation, yes.
Okay. How about special event signs? So that's basically the same thing. It's alerting the public or the neighborhood, letting them know that, hey, there's an event going on, the additional parking is down the road, around the street at the church, and then there's valet parking. But my question is, can that be made part of the conditional use permit for him to put out signage whenever he has a special event or large event to prevent people from parking in front of his driveway or creating a problem on that street with too much parking?
So, yeah, you could certainly craft a condition that would speak to signage and a signage plan presented to the planning department for approval to ensure that parking is limited on the street. There are requirements and prohibitions on temporary signage as it relates to the city's right-of-way. So once you're getting into the streets, into medians, at intersections, what have you, we couldn't permit any signs there, be it temporary or permanent. But certainly on site, he has the ability to put some circulation signage up.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Rector.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I think embedded somewhere in my comments is what I'm getting ready to say next, but I just want to make sure that it's clear. We're not inventing a wheel here. We're just simply making some modifications to an existing business. The bed and breakfast is there. The cafe is there. The only change with the cafe is that they just want to be able to cook and serve the food inside rather than having people stand around outside. And going back to the events, my assumption is, and perhaps Mr. Brown could back me up with this, but if there's going to be a wedding or something held at this particular venue, it's more than likely that members of the wedding party are going to be staying at the Penner House. So even though we're allowing non-guests to have events there, my guess is that most of the events that are going to happen there are going to be affiliated with guests that are staying at the facilities. So I just want to keep that in the forefront, that this is not a huge change to what is already there. It's just simply an improvement and enhancement to what is already there.
Council, any other questions or comments? Okay, before we vote, I've got a few comments. I agree with Councilman Rector. We are not reinventing the wheel. Basically, what we're doing is, rather than requiring a food truck, we're allowing for inside dining. It's a land use issue, and while parking could possibly be a problem, it's the parking as part of the application meets the code and satisfies the requirement. So while it could be a concern, I don't think it warrants not approving this application under the circumstances by a long shot. I do want to thank the applicants, the Browns, for their continued investment in downtown. It's these type of establishments that are going to contribute to the vitality and economy of what I hope is a growing downtown district, and that's something unique. It's something different. It's something. When it comes to downtown, we want people to wake up in Norfolk and say, let's go to downtown Suffolk tonight to get something to eat. Let's go to downtown Suffolk tonight and do some shopping. Let's go to downtown Suffolk tonight and go to the Cultural Arts Center and see a show. This is what we're looking for. It's exactly what we're looking for. But just like everything else, there's issues to be considered. But under the circumstances wholeheartedly in support of this ordinance as well. So with that being said, we have a motion a long time ago from Councilman Rector, I believe it was, for approval, and a second from Councilman Fawcett. Is there any other further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
The motion is approved by a vote of 6-1 with Vice Mayor Ward voting in opposition.
Okay, our next public hearing is an ordinance to grant a conditional use permit to establish a solar energy facility on property located on Hosier Road. This is zoning map 45, parcels 5, 5A, 6, 7, 7A, 7B, 7C, and 7D. Account number 0506480000, 0532807000, 0517520000, 0511310000, 0526910000, 0518430000, 0511300000, and last but not least, 0517510000, and this is CUP 2023-18. Mr. Manager, please provide an overview.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Kevin Wine will provide the staff report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. As stated, this is a conditional use permit request for a collection of 8 parcels on Hosier Road to establish a solar energy facility. The property is zoned A, that's our agricultural zoning district, and it's on the east side of Hosier Road. The proposed facility will consist of 49 megawatts, new megawatts of solar modules and accessory equipment on those 8 parcels as noted on land totaling 266 acres total. The property is located within our central growth area, and it's designated for use as our inner ring suburban use district. Here you have the parcels. They all have frontage on Hosier Road except for one. That would be tax map 45*7D. There are existing single-family dwellings on tax maps 45*7C and 7. Those will be demolished to make way for the proposed use if approved. The remaining parcels consist of agricultural and forested land cover, in addition to some non-tidal wetlands there, getting in close proximity to the Dismal Swamp. Here we have a conceptual plan. This depicts the proposed layout of the solar panels, access roads, stormwater retention facilities, landscaping buffers, and other related improvements to the subject property relative to the existing land cover and surrounding uses. Here, this slide represents a visual simulation from a viewpoint on Hosier Road. We were provided several of these, but chose to utilize this one as an example to depict what the facility would look like upon the maturation of the vegetation that would be required by our ordinance. You can see visually what exists currently, and then what the landscaping would look like after 10 years of growth and 25 years of growth. As with solar facilities in the past, they're not necessarily traffic generators themselves once they exist. However, we are concerned, particularly due to some of the more remote locations, about construction traffic and how it will get to and from the site, because usually there's a 3 to 6 month period in where there's a lot of construction. You have large trucks coming in and out. So we have been provided what we call a construction haul route that depicts how construction traffic will get to and from the site. It's been reviewed by our traffic engineering department and accepted. But in this case, tractor trailer trucks and dump trucks and the like accessing the site during construction will be from Route 13 Carolina Road, just south of the airport via Airport Road to Meadow Country Road, and ultimately north on Hosier Road. This will assist in avoiding avoiding the downtown narrow roads like Factory, County, and Hunter Street. And that is would be a condition of approval should it be approved. Another key concern, and this is kind of lessons learned with the solar facilities we've seen and approved in the past and have since been developed, but noise, particularly from the inverters, has been a concern. So we have been provided a noise exhibit from an engineer, which notes kind of the hot spots on the property, but really indicates that even at the property boundaries, the ambient noise is low and it really doesn't constitute any necessary mitigation. And it's important to note that vegetation goes a long way as well to dampen potential noise impacts. So, with any land use application, be it a rezoning or a conditional use permit, we analyze the comprehensive plan, we analyze the Unified Development Ordinance to identify whether it's appropriate for the use. What does our comprehensive plan say? So I did state that this is in the central growth area. Area within our growth areas, it's reserved for higher intensity development. It's supposed to be in close proximity to existing development. And in this case, being in the central growth area, it's designated for use as inner ring suburban use district. And what that means, and specifically outlined in the comp plan, appropriate uses in the inner ring suburban include single-family residential, traditional neighborhood developments, neighborhood commercial, and some light manufacturing among civic and community facilities. That this would necessarily comply with any of those appropriate uses. Additionally, as a part of an element of our comprehensive plan, we developed the Carolina Corridor Land Use Strategy. This goes back early 2000, so it's a little dated at this point, but this property specifically was a part of that plan. And the purpose of that strategy was to develop ways to extend the residential and commercial uses south of downtown, because it's in pretty close proximity to downtown. This land use strategy concluded that with good planning practices, this area of the city going down Hosier and really between Hosier and White Marsh could meet the desires to accommodate 1,000 new residential units, which could be achieved while generating demand for supporting commercial uses as well. Once again, the site is within the inner ring suburban use district within the central growth area, and growth areas exist to denote where urban and suburban scale development is appropriate to accommodate future forecasted growth within the city. Land located in the growth areas in reasonable proximity to existing developed areas they're either served or have the ability to reasonably served with infrastructure needed to support their development. It's important to note, in this case, you have two larger tracts of land immediately to this collection, this assemblage of parcels east, going towards White Marsh that have been approved, and ultimately infrastructure lines will one day be run right to the shared property line there. So even without that being the case, we have water and sewer available for extension approximately 1,500 feet or so to the north. And additionally, I think it's really important to stress the proximity of this to downtown. We're 1.25 miles south of East Washington Street in this area. That's around the Health and Human Services Building, Hall Avenue. Additionally, from an aerial distance perspective, the main intersection downtown, Washington, North Main, we're about 1.5 miles. So it's in really close proximity, and I think that stresses that's why it's in the growth area in this case, due to that proximity. Here's an excerpt from that Carolina Corridor Land Use Strategy. I've hashed out the property here in question. It's a split of what the land use strategy calls for here, ultimately envisions. You have residential, that orange color, and then that kind of paler red color, maybe a darker salmon, is slated for business use. We can debate the business use of the property, but ultimately there's kind of a higher and better land use designated for this property, and I think the Carolina Corridor Land Use Strategy outlines that. Here's a close-up of it. But it does constitute a large percentage of that overall land available for development between White Marsh and Hoosier Roads. So in conclusion, conditional uses are permitted only through the issuance of a conditional use permit by City Council after ensuring the use can be appropriately accommodated on specific property. We look at all of these on a case-by-case basis, and that it will be in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Staff's reviewed this. We do not believe it aligns with the comprehensive plan. Additionally, we want to ensure that it can be constructed and operated in a manner which is compatible with surrounding land uses and the overall character of the community, and that the public interest and general welfare of the citizens will be protected. All of that's outlined in Section 31306C of the Unified Development Ordinance. Every CUP you consider, we outline those 8 criteria. A part of our charge is ensuring that the use can operate in compatibility with those 8 criteria. We have determined that this one falls short of meeting all of those 8 criteria, and specifically subsection 6, which requires the finding that the establishment of the proposed use will not impede the orderly development and improvement of surrounding properties for uses permitted within the zoning district. We do have property zoned immediately to the east that's zoned RU and RC. Those are some higher density residential districts, and it's in close proximity to the downtown area as well. Additionally, subsection 8 requires a finding that the public interest and welfare supporting the proposed conditional use permit will be sufficient enough to outweigh the individual interests which are adversely affected by the establishment of the proposed use. We found that utilizing this 266 acres within the growth area for a solar facility does not align with that either. So in closing, the site is specifically designated for residential and commercial uses outlined in that Carolina Corridor Land Use Strategy, which is an element of our comprehensive plan. Further, the comprehensive plan designates residential neighborhoods and supporting commercial uses as appropriate for the inner-ring suburban, not necessarily large-scale infrastructure projects like this. It does not fully address all of the 8 criteria outlined for consideration within the UDO as it relates to conditional use permits. And as those criteria are not met and it doesn't align with the comprehensive plan, staff is recommending denial of this use permit. The Planning Commission did consider this at their meeting last month on December 19th, and by a vote of 4-3, have recommended this application for denial to you all this evening. It is important to note that staff, while we are recommending denial, and we've thoroughly outlined that, in the event that you all should move to approve this, we have provided some conditions to be associated with that we feel would align, would mitigate some potential negative impacts. Once again, should you all be inclined to recommend approval, but that does not impact our recommendation of denial. With that being said, that concludes my staff report on this item. I will stand by at the conclusion of the public hearing to address any concerns.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wine. Before we open the public hearing, Madam Clerk, please explain the timing system.
This is a public hearing, and each speaker is asked to provide their name and their address. We will have a 10-minute period for the proponents, a 15-minute period for those in opposition, and then an additional 5 minutes for rebuttal.
This is a public hearing. Will the first speaker please come forward and provide their name and address, and that is to speak in favor of this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council. For the record, my name is Rob Beeman. I'm a local land use attorney with the Troutman Pepper Law Firm at 222 Central Park Avenue, Suite 2000 in Virginia Beach, Virginia. First, I did want to thank Kevin Wine and the rest of the planning staff for all their hard work on this application. They've been very available to us, and we've appreciated their feedback and their constructive comments on this application throughout this process. In light of council's election not to approve the deferral request that we made at the beginning of the hearing, the applicant would like to respectfully request a withdrawal of this application at this time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. City Attorney, do we have to vote on that?
Withdrawal ends the matter.
Say again?
A withdrawal ends the matter.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, sir. So the matter has been withdrawn, so there's no need to proceed with the public hearing.
Thank you all.
Sir. Okay, our next public hearing is an ordinance to grant a conditional use permit to establish an outdoor operations and storage, manufacturing, processing use for the establishment of a ready-mix concrete plant on property located at 1273 Portsmouth Boulevard, zoning map 36, parcel 15B, account number 0534260000. This is CUP 2023-22. Mr. Manager, please provide an overview.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, again, Mr. Wine will provide a staff report.
Thank you again, Mr. Manager, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. I think anyone traveling the Route 58 into the city from the Chesapeake side is familiar with this property. So this is a conditional use permit to request the establishment of a ready-mix concrete plant. This is for property located at 1273 Portsmouth Boulevard. The property is located within the Central Growth Area, designated entering suburban use district, and is also located within the Cypress voting borough. Here we have the property. It is located in the M2 Heavy Industrial Zoning District. The surrounding properties to the south, east, and west are also zoned M2. To the north of the property, you have a CSX-owned railroad line, and the city of Portsmouth has property there as well, immediately adjacent to Portsmouth Boulevard. Across Portsmouth Boulevard, you have the B2 district, and some RLM and RU zoning districts, both residential. So the applicant's request here is to operate a concrete ready-mix plant on the site. It's on the northwestern portion of the site. You can see it outlined here, highlighted, called out with that red box. The property is currently utilized as an aggregate sales yard for Vulcan Materials and an asphalt plant for Branscombe. So there are similar uses there currently, but in order to establish a ready-mix concrete plant in the city of Suffolk in the M2 district, you do require a conditional use permit. Those uses did not. The traffic memo that was associated with this request does anticipate the generation of 34 truck trips. The existing transportation network appears adequate to accommodate this modest increase of truck traffic along this corridor. The health department has provided some comments as it related to the existing water supply. There's a well on site. These users tend to utilize a lot of water. They'll be utilizing that from a well and not the public system. So they note that the well on site appears to be used for processing purposes and is not potable. We have conditioned or recommended a condition to screen some of the existing frontage. It's not direct frontage along Portsmouth Boulevard, but it is highly visible there. So we thought it would be appropriate to utilize this opportunity to condition some evergreen vegetation along their property line closest to Portsmouth Boulevard. The site does have one access point from Portsmouth Boulevard. This crosses property owned by the city of Portsmouth and the railroad, CSX. The applicant has submitted an agreement between the railroad and Vulcan Materials that establishes legal ingress-egress to their property, so they are permitted to cross that. And they are working with the city of Portsmouth to get legal access as well. And that would be a condition of our approval. But we have reached out to the city of Portsmouth, and they have indicated to us in writing that will not be an issue, and they will provide a letter authorizing them to utilize it once they have drafted the legal document. So in working with the departments here in the city, noted that the existing entrance, we wanted to have that improved to commercial standards, certainly durable, make it more durable considering the heavy equipment that's traveling through it. So it includes a concrete entrance within the public right-of-way on Portsmouth Boulevard and an asphalt pavement on the city of Portsmouth-owned property. Once again, the city of Portsmouth Public Utilities Department did not have any objections regarding asphalt over their property at this time. So staff's evaluated this, as we do with all conditional use permits, against the criteria established within the UDO for the issuance of a CUP, considering it is a M2 district utilized with like uses already. We believe this expansion on the site is compatible with the existing neighborhood and do not object to it and recommend its approval. Additionally, the Planning Commission at their meeting on December 19th, by a vote of 6-1, are recommending this application to you all this evening for your approval. That concludes my presentation on this item. I will stand by at the conclusion of the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Wine. Before we open the public hearing, Madam Clerk, please explain the timing system.
This is a public hearing, and each speaker is asked to provide their name and their address. We will have a 10-minute period for the proponents, a 15-minute period for those in opposition, and then an additional 5 minutes for rebuttal.
This is a public hearing. Will the first speaker please come forward and provide their name and address? That is to speak in favor of this ordinance.
Evening, Mayor Dooman, Vice Mayor Ward, members of council. My name is Randy Royal with Kimley Horn Associates. I'm representing this application. First of all, Mr. Wine does such a good job. He's taken away most of my speech here, so I'll be pretty short. We've worked quite a bit with staff. We're fine with the 5 conditions he has. We've worked with Portsmouth, who owns that driveway going into the site, which they've been utilizing for probably 40 years, but we can't find the legal document. I personally have been in touch with the city attorney over there. We've sent him an exhibit. He's writing up a deed to grant us the access there. We're going to be putting trees in. I've talked to their engineers also. That's why we've got concrete in the right-of-way. They want, and Mr. Moore, you'll remember this from your utilities days, they're going to relocate their lines in there, so they want asphalt on their part of the property, so if they have to maintain it and, of course, installing it, that will be easier than putting concrete in there. So that's why we have heavy-duty asphalt on the site. Just putting a batch plant back in again that they had years ago, we have to get a use permit, as Mr. Wine said, because it hasn't operated for 2 years. Construction use, no residential neighbors, no noise problems, work with staff, fine with the 5 items, as I said. Planning Commission recommended approval, staff recommended approval. Hope you'll see fit to grant us an approval. Thank you for your time, and I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you, sir. We have our next speaker to speak in favor of this ordinance.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Beasley. I am the general manager of Capital Concrete, which is the ready-mix facility we're talking about. My family started this business back in 1959. My grandfather started it, and my mother ran it for 40 years. In 2022, we became a part of Vulcan Materials, but still operate under the Capital Concrete banner. I run all the facilities we have. We have 5 other locations, and we are looking forward to your approval and being able to move into the city of Suffolk. We're relocating one of our facilities from Chesapeake and moving it to this site, hopefully. As Mr. Royal said, this was a ready-mix facility prior. It was taken down about 10 years ago because the operator left the area. So we would like to put the plant back in the exact same area. It does not disturb any more, or it does not create any more pervious of a footprint, and we really look forward to joining the Suffolk community and being a proactive member of the group. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Having the next speaker to speak in favor of this ordinance. Have anyone else who'd like to speak in favor? Hearing none, do we have anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this ordinance? Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition? Hearing no additional speakers, this public hearing is now closed. An ordinance has been presented for council's consideration. What is your pleasure, Councilman Bennett?
Mr. Wine, would you come up a minute, please, sir? Oh, if you, Eric, not Eric, Robert. On the traffic, you said how many more trucks, traffic, that will increase that?
They anticipate 34 additional trucks serving the site daily.
34. And the reason I'm asking that, I have no problem with, I remember the other cement plant was there, but it's so close now up to National Parkway, And with all the other, Royal Farms there and all that traffic starts backing up so much in there, it just give me a little concern about how they're getting in and out, special if they're coming across to make a left, coming into Suffolk. So how are we going to be able to sort of manage that? Robert, you want to try to help me out with that?
I'll look to the engineer.
I'm not sure I totally understood the question, sir.
All right. With the trucks coming out, adding 34 more, and it's so close to the intersection of National Parkway at the stoplight, and them coming out to make a left turn, traffic is already backing up beyond their entrance. How are we going to be able to deal with the trucks coming in that's going to make a left turn?
That may be an operational issue for the applicant to explain, but generally, concrete trucks is the type of product that goes out early in the day. Most folks don't want a load of concrete showing up at a job 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which is when we have most of our problems. And again, traffic is going to generally turn to the left, as you noted, but they're going to go down to Suburban Drive because, again, a lot of times they're trying to get back to the Suffolk bypass, and that is the most efficient way to do that at the current time. In the near future, as the new SIPSA flyover comes over, there will actually be an opportunity for those trucks to turn right and go back and use that new flyover and go westbound again on the bypass. So in the short term, it may be a little bit problematic. I don't anticipate, we didn't see a lot of indication of that in our analysis. But again, I think in the little bit longer term, it will get much better.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Give me that.
Any other questions, comments, or a motion? Councilman Fawcett.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve. I think it's that location I'm familiar with and dealt with those folks quite a bit on some of the materials they haul out of there. They do have trucks coming in and out of there at different times hauling, but I don't know that this is going to be a big impact right now. So therefore, I think it's a good project for the Suffolk, and appreciate you wanting to move from Chesapeake come to Suffolk anyway. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to motion for approval from Councilman Fawcett. Councilman Williams?
I'd like to second that, Mayor.
Second from Councilman Williams. Councilman Rector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in the interest of complete and full disclosure, I would like to point out that I'm proud to call Ms. Beasley my second cousin. Her mother is my first cousin. The grandfather that she was referring to, John Toohey II, is my mother's brother. So we have a long family history. Unfortunately, that part of the family did not directly touch my part of the family. So I did not get to participate in the sale of Capital Concrete, and I don't get to participate in anything that is ongoing with Vulcan Materials. And further, I'm probably one of the few members of the direct family, Ms. Beasley, that actually did not serve a time working for your mother at Capital Concrete. But anyway, with that, I'm very much in support of this, and I appreciate them moving their operation to Suffolk. And I have discussed this matter with the city attorney, and he has determined that I do not have a conflict and am allowed to vote.
All right, thank you for that history lesson, Mr. Rector. We have a motion for approval from Councilman Fawcett and a second from Councilman Williams. Do we have any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
Motion is approved by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, we'll now move to our final public hearing for this evening, which is an ordinance to amend Chapter 31 of the Unified Development Ordinance of the Code of the City of Suffolk, Article 5, Subdivision, Section 31-505, Authority, Section 31-506, Classification of Applications and General Procedural Requirements, Section 31-514, Family Transfers, and Appendix A, Definitions. This is OTA 2023-009. Mr. Manager, please provide an overview.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Again, Mr. Wine will give his staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. This is an ordinance text amendment. And in looking at your Exhibit B in our staff report for your consideration, it may seem really complex, this ordinance text amendment. But as it is sometimes when you're modifying the Unified Development Ordinance, you kind of have to untangle several parts of it to accomplish your overarching goal. So at the heart of this issue, it is to allow trusts and life estates to participate in the family transfer process. That is what this ordinance text amendment is about. I'll kind of walk you through what that means for us, what that means for you all, and what that means for citizens who want to utilize our family transfer subdivision process. But this comes back to a directive that we received in September, a couple months ago, to ask the Planning Commission to research and initiate amendments that would allow for a trust to utilize the family transfer subdivision process as provided for in state code. State code does allow for this. As such, we may or may not as a locality participate because it's a permissive regulation, but ultimately it will align with state code. So family transfer subdivisions are exempt from certain subdivision requirements, provided that a set of requirements regarding ownership, transfer of the parcels are met. I'm going to outline those just a little bit so we all truly understand what we're talking about. But lots created through the family transfer process they're subject to a couple stipulations. One, they have to be transferred to an immediate family member. We define that. I'll go over that in a moment. But they're also conveyance periods. They have to be held for a certain period after they are received. This gets back to the goal of family transfers to stay in the family and keep families close, ultimately. So our current regulations stipulate that no family transfer shall be made by a limited liability corporation or other legal entity which fails to meet the definition of family. LLCs will still not be able to participate, but other legal entities, in this case trusts, life estates, this would authorize them to participate. So here's the state enabling legislation. I won't read that, but it does state that locality may, at its discretion, include in its subdivision ordinance provisions that allow for a member of an immediate family, once again as defined by state code, of beneficiaries of a trust or land held in a trust to participate in a family transfer process, family subdivision process. A key caveat here is it differs from our current regulations for a traditional family subdivision to a person, immediate family to immediate family, which is associated with a 10-year holding period. For trust, that would be 15 years. And that is what state code allows for. That is what our code would have to allow for. So once again, here's the intent. The purpose and intent of the family subdivision is to keep family estates within the family, and within the immediate family, and really not for the purpose of short-term investment or sale. It's to eliminate, proliferation of minor subdivision cuts. In fact, we revisited some of our provisions, and I'm going to go over these provisions just so we all have a good idea of the stipulations and regulations associated with the family transfer and what makes it different from a minor subdivision. But we revisited those probably about 10, 15 years ago, really to deter circumventions of our minor subdivision regulations. It really comes down to how many cuts a farm may have. And folks were participating in circumventing the minor subdivision process by doing family transfers. So family subdivisions are permitted only in these zoning districts. There are rural zoning districts. So your agricultural zoning district, your RR, that's your rural residential, and your RE zoning district. No family subdivision is allowed for any parcel created through the provisions of a major subdivision. So in certain areas of the city, you may be zoned RE, but you are in a established major subdivision. The existence of your lot within a major subdivision prohibits you from participating. So just to kind of walk you through, going back probably a year and a half or so, we kind of touched on the differences between minor subdivisions and family transfers. But minor subdivisions, no more than 3 cuts plus a residue for each parent track as it existed on March 1st, 1970. That would get you 3 lots plus a residue, 4 lots in total. That's our minor subdivision process. Each lot must have road frontage on a public street. And minimum road frontage is determined by the underlying zoning district, but for apples to apples sake here, in the A, the RR, and the RE zoning districts, that is 150 feet of road frontage. So you need to have that road frontage in order to participate in the minor subdivision process. Without that, you do not meet our minimum zoning requirements. And then there are the underlying lot requirements. Those still apply for family transfer subdivisions, but in the A and the RR, that's 1 acre minimum lot size. In the RE, that is 3 acres. These are administrative approval process, ultimately signed by the Director of Planning and Community Development, who acts as the subdivision agent. So here's a good example. You've all seen this before, but this is a traditional minor subdivision, 1 lot plus, 3 lots plus a residue. These just so happen to be about 3 acres or so in size, but this is ultimately what that looks like on a plat. You can see all of these lots have road frontage on West Liberty Spring Road. The key difference for a family subdivision is no street frontage is required. You can be served with an easement. We need a record of that easement. It needs to be deeded and associated with the plat should that be utilized, but that easement, lots do have to have at least 50 feet on that easement. And that easement needs to be reasonable in size and not less than 15 feet in width to accommodate vehicular traffic. The Planning Commission is the approval authority for family transfer subdivision plats. So the proposed amendments before you this evening are touching a variety of sections. I'm going to kind of breeze through them, but we amend the 2 definitions as it relates to this process in Appendix A. That's where definitions live in the UDO. We modify Section 31505 as it relates to the authority for the subdivision process. Section 31506, which talks about the classification of different subdivision applications. And ultimately, the biggie, Section 31514, that outlines the family transfer process. So the amendments do a few things, but we expand our definition of family subdivision really to enable a trust or a life estate to participate. The definition of immediate family has been updated. The state defines that. We are utilizing their definition to utilize within the UDO, and this is what immediate family in Virginia means. It's any person who is a natural or legally defined offspring, stepchild, spouse, grandchild, grandparent, or parent of the owner. Specifically, it does not include aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, cousins, or any other next of kin to the owner. So immediate family is specific, and that is what the family transfer process in Virginia is limited to. We have updated the term family transfer throughout the UDO, which is kind of misleading. It's a family subdivision. It's a subdivision of land that's participating in the family subdivision process. So you'll see that in this Exhibit B. Additionally, Section 31505, we've updated that to identify the state enabling legislation. So there are 3 parts to this, and I know it's a lot of information, but because there are certain regulations that will apply to all family subdivisions in the city, we've kind of broken it into 3 sections. So we have the regulations that will apply to all family subdivisions, both those where a trust is involved and those where it's just an immediate family member to an immediate family member, there's no trust. And then we've broken it into the differences. So we have you're a trust, you're doing it this way. If you are a family member to a family member, you're doing it that way. That's kind of how we had to break it up, and that's because we wanted to change as little as possible as it relates to our current process for the person-to-person transfer, while accommodating the trust to immediate family member process. And I'm going to walk you through those differences here. So the following are all regulations that apply to every family subdivision in the city of Suffolk, but the immediate family owners, family members must be 18 years of age or older. That is important because in theory, if they weren't, they could deed it, and the conveyance period, holding period would expire by the time they even get 18, and then they're free to sell the property. So that would be kind of a clear circumvention. Plats must be accompanied by a sworn affidavit from the grantor and grantee, basically acknowledging adherence to the provisions that I'm outlining here, of which they're substantial. There must be the submission of an executed affidavit that acknowledges the intent of the family subdivision is not for short-term investment or sale outside of the family. Submission of a title report completed by a title examiner. The allowance of ingress-egress easements to be used in lieu of frontage required of traditional subdivisions. So at that point, we would need that deed associated and acknowledgement of that easement on the plat presented for the city's approval. Compliance with all applicable laws, including the Department of Health requirements. Signature of the plat by all individuals having interest, including easement rights. That's really important. So if there's an easement on the property that they may have interest in, but they don't necessarily own, those folks would still have to sign that plat. We also require approval at the time of plat of any well and septic systems by the Virginia Department of Health. And authorization of, once again, family subdivisions are only permitted within the A, the RR, and the RE zoning districts. So these would be the specific criteria for trusts and life estates. So in order to participate in the family transfer process with a trust, the trust beneficiaries must be immediate family members to each other. If that is not the case, you are then not eligible. All trust beneficiaries must agree in writing to the proposed family subdivision. So all members of that trust, they're immediate family members, and they agree in writing that the property should be subdivided. So all grantees of subdivided land, so those receiving the property, they have to be an immediate family member to at least one member of that trust. So they still have to meet that immediate family definition, but when we're considering trusts, they just have to be an immediate family member of one. The grantees need not be beneficiaries of the trust themselves. So those are the provisions that are specific to trust and life estate family subdivisions. So what are the differences between the two? Put this table together, but on the left side of the column there, you have family subdivisions. These are your traditional family subdivisions, and then you have family subdivisions including a trust or a life estate on the right-hand side. But the ownership period before you can participate in the subdivision process for a traditional family subdivision is 3 years. You have to have held that property in fee simple ownership for 3 years. The difference for trusts, there's no ownership period required before you can participate. So trusts, they could have came into the property ownership, yesterday, and they can submit a plat. The holding period after conveyance for a traditional family subdivision is 10 years. For trust, it is 15 years. Once again, that is state requirement. If we are to enable trust family subdivisions, the holding period must be 15 years. The reason that traditional family subdivisions does not have to be 15 years, and the city can select what conveyance period, holding period that they choose is because we're a fast-growing locality. The city of Suffolk is identified by the Commonwealth of Virginia as a fast-growing locality. This was not a provision that we wanted to necessarily change as it relates to traditional family subdivisions. The process has largely been working. In both instances, they will be able to seek relief. That would be a city council action, and that would be relief from the holding period. You, on occasion, see those circumstances have, changed as it relates to the grantee who received it, and for whatever reason, they're looking to sell it. That still requires city council action for both. Additionally, there are limits on when the subdivision created through the family transfer process can then be subdivided itself. It's rare this happens, but in order to do that, those conveyance periods come back. So you cannot do that on a traditional family subdivision for a 10-year period and for a life or trust estate for 15 years. So I know that's a lot of information. I apologize for talking so long, but this is a lot of information, a lot of variables. But ultimately, this is to allow for trust and life estates to participate in the family transfer process. That's what this is about. I hope we were clear on the differences between traditional versus life estates, and we're supportive of this. We believe it can work, and the Planning Commission at their meeting on December 19th by a vote of 7-0 are sending to you all a resolution recommending approval of this amendment. So with that being said, I will stand by at the conclusion of the public hearing for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wine. Before we open the public hearing, Madam Clerk, please explain the timing system.
This is a public hearing, and each speaker is asked to provide their name and their address and will receive 3 minutes to offer their comment.
This is a public hearing. Will the first speaker please come forward and provide their name and address? Do we have anyone who would like to speak? Hearing no speakers, the public hearing is now closed. An ordinance has been presented for council's consideration. Questions, comments, or a motion? Councilman Fawcett.
Move to approve, Mayor.
Got a motion for approval from Councilman Fawcett. Councilman Johnson.
Kevin, thank you. Second.
A second from Councilman Johnson. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, before we vote, I'd just like to add that I think that this was needed and appropriate in today's environment. I know in recent years, it has been recommended that a lot of individuals put their personal holdings into a personal trust, and this is a great addition to us being able to accommodate our citizens that have chosen that method. So with that being said, we get a motion for approval from Councilman Fawcett with a second from Councilman Johnson. Council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
The motion is approved by a vote of 7-0.
We have no ordinances nor resolutions this evening. We do have a staff report related to speed enforcement cameras. Mr. Manager, please provide an overview.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, tonight's staff report is an update on the city's speed enforcement cameras. Focus of the report will be on their effectiveness and what type of activities that we see being constructed or done out of any revenue experienced. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mayor Duman, Vice Mayor Ward, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight to provide this update, this joint update with Director Lewis on the automated photo enforcement that we have in our city. My portion of the program will be, I'll focus on the work zones, and I'll focus on our school zones. First slide, you can see is Holland Road and Pruden Boulevard work zones. You can see our high number, like when it was implemented from June, July, and August, our numbers of citations there were high 12,000, 15,000, 15,000, but then they started to decrease after that on both Pruden Boulevard and Holland Road. We had one uptick on Holland Road in October, and we believe that was due to the fact that the road construction shifted, and we had to move the cameras because of that shift. So the cameras were moved, so we had an uptick in October, and as you can see, in November and December, those numbers started to go down. The 576 in December is not the entire number because some citations are still being reviewed by staff before they can add to that number. Prudent Boulevard, kind of the same thing. You see the numbers are high at the beginning and then they gradually, continuously go down month to month. Next slide is Nansemond Suffolk Academy. School zones is both the Nansemond Suffolk Academy on Prudent Boulevard and our Nansemond Suffolk Academy Harborview Boulevard campus. Same type of thing here. You can see in August, once it started, you had your higher numbers in August and September, and then the numbers began to decrease and continued to decrease through December. Elephant Fork, Florence Bowser, and Nansemond Parkway Elementary Schools. Same type of thing that we're going to have throughout this presentation is that the numbers, when school started in September, then the numbers were highest in October, and then they began to decrease as word started getting out that they were in use. McBen, Junior, Oakland, and Creekside Elementary Schools, same scenario. The numbers start high, and then they continuously decrease as the word gets out, and people start to adhere to the signs. John Yates, John F. Kennedy, Kings Fork Middle and High Schools, same scenario throughout this, is that the numbers begin high and then they continuously go down as the word gets out. The total issued citations versus court hearing requests is 0.8, over 133,000 citations issued, only 1,100 have been contested in court, and that's less than 1%. 0.83% have been contested in court. The number of citations issued to Suffolk residents, I know the number, and I believe the mayor had spoken before, was 14% at some point, but that was before our school zones kicked in. So that number went to 19.67% Suffolk residents out of 133,000 citations issued. Only 19% of those have been to Suffolk residents. 81% have been to, from other cities or other states. And the purpose of all this is safety. The Suffolk Police Department we work hard each and every day to ensure that our motoring public can move through our city safely. The deployment of this technology is specifically focused on slowing traffic in potentially dangerous areas to keep our workers, keep our children, keep our citizens and our visitors safe while they're in our city. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lewis, and I'll be available to answer any questions once he's done.
Thank you, Chief. So again, we're just going to do a quick overview of the entire program and just give you a few updated facts on this. So again, remember, we're actually running 4 different types of systems. We're running the red light running systems that are yet to come on board, and I'll talk a bit about that in just a moment. We currently have the speeding in the school zones. Those are permanent cameras. We have the passing of the stop school buses that are portable cameras on a certain number of school buses. And again, we have speeding in 2 of the work zones within our city. Again, just remind you, a lot of these, you're seeing these temporary trailers set up in front of the school zones. They're being converted to a more permanent setup, and again, on the sides of the school buses. Currently, we have 51 school buses in the city that are outfitted with these camera systems. And again, our work zones, the state law on these work zones and these school zones are very clear as to how we operate, when we operate, and what required signage has to be in place. There's been a lot of internet traffic lately about those, but again, everything has been verified as being correct and proper in accordance with state law as far as signage and locations. So again, we have the red light running cameras we're getting ready to bring online. Our biggest challenge thus far has been getting permanent power to these. The good news is I got notification just before I came in today. The very first one of those had a meter set today. That's at Pruden and Lake Prince Drive. So again, in the very near future, we'll bring that online. We are working on the rest of them. The gentleman from Dominion Power has committed to me. He's working the rest of the list to try to get those cameras, those meters set so those cameras can operate. I'll remind you, one of the requirements is once we bring those online, we have to do a 30-day warning period in which we issue the warning notices to the public before we can begin actual enforcement. And prior to doing that, we would certainly do a very extensive public notification and outreach to give people warning that those are in place. So again, what are the locations of these red light cameras? Again, you can see those. At this point, we are authorized by state code to have up to 9 locations. We initially selected 8 of these, and one of those is actually a little bit on hold, again, pending construction. So there may be a time as we move forward that we end up with a work zone camera in that construction zone, depending on what the experience is once construction starts. But again, all of these cameras are getting ready to come online as soon as we can get permanent power in place to them. Just real quickly as a reminder what the civil penalties are, and I say civil because these do not have criminal relationship to them. There are no points brought to license. So again, when the red light cameras come online, they will be a $50 per violation charge. School bus violation, certainly one of the most important things, is a $250 fee. And the school zone and the work zones are each $100 apiece for violating those work zones. I will remind you there is a 10-mile-an-hour threshold on the speed zones. So whatever the posted speed limit is, you have up to 9 miles an hour above that before the camera kicks on. There's been a lot of comments about whether or not the cameras can track multiple vehicles. Again, as we noted in earlier presentations, these are state-of-the-art LiDAR, which is laser related systems, and they can track multiple vehicles almost instantaneously. So again, when somebody says, well, I was driving through and another vehicle blew by me and I got the ticket, I will guarantee you both vehicles got the ticket, or all 3 vehicles got the ticket. There's been some conversation about have we been citing tractor trailers? And again, yes, we are citing tractor trailers. In fact, I've had some conversations with one of the big carriers in our area, and I said, how are you handling this? And they said, we track down who's pulling our trailer, and we send them the bill. So those are going out also. So again, the question is, what are we going to do with the funds that have been raised thus far from the operation of these cameras? And again, the whole idea was to try to put this money back into improving public safety around our city. We talked at the last council meeting about upgrading the school flashes. One of the complaints we've heard quite a bit is our school flashes do not always seem to come on and come off at exactly the proper time. I likened to the mayor the other day that it's kind of like we took a system over and we got everything from a state-of-the-art Tesla to a Model T with baling wire and duct tape on the fenders. So again, we're trying to bring that up. The beauty of it is once we get these things upgraded, we will be able to instantaneously know every day, every moment, whether they're operating properly. We'll be able to generate reports. If during a day, schools either take in late or close early, we can instantly send a message out from our office, one message, and change all the cameras to the appropriate, not the cameras, change the flashes to the appropriate times. The days when those occur, we do not operate the citation system. So if school is supposed to be open at 8:30 in the morning, for some reason it's 10:30 when they open, the cameras don't operate that day. You hear a lot of things floating around, but we operate these within the parameters of the times on the signs that are posted at each of these locations. So again, last council, you all authorized us to upgrade the school flashers, and we also have a proposal to put a pedestrian crosswalk and some sidewalk improvements in between Kings Fork High School and Middle School. We are proceeding forward with those right now under design, and actually equipment has been ordered for the pedestrian system. And again, hopefully in the very near future, we'll have that operational. The sidewalk work may end up being this summer after school gets out again to minimize the impact to our school system. There have been a number of other projects that have been suggested, and some of those you'll see on the screen as for possible things to use these funds for. My staff is very much in the process right now of evaluating these and trying to work up cost estimates and effectiveness estimates that we can bring back to again decide on what the final locations that we're going to utilize these funds for. And with that, the chief and I certainly stand available for any questions you may have on any of these aspects of our program.
Thank you. Ooh, get all my lights up now. Councilman Fawcett.
Robert, thanks for the presentation. Also, Chief, thank you for what you're doing out there each and every day and all your officers and personnel. The school flashes, do you have any idea? I know that's going to be kind of a monumental project to get them all synchronized to where you can put them online at the times they're supposed to be. Is there any timeline on when that project, is it still being operated by the school system now? The way it operates under their, I guess it's got a box there and they set the time and all that in there for them lights. So where are you going to be at in the process of how long it's going to take to get this program shifted to you so we don't hear complaints about, well, the school lights weren't operating and I got a ticket, blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts?
Yes, sir. So back when this system began, back late last spring, early summer, we, the city, went to the school system and said, hey, we'd like to take these systems over for you and operate them because, again, we saw it was imperative that the flashing light systems and the camera systems worked hand in glove. They had to be timed the same. As I noted earlier, when we took that system over, we got everything from state-of-the-art equipment that we don't really need to do anything to except maybe put a communications modem in, to stuff that might even have been out there when I was a kid in school. So some of this stuff is very hard to keep operational. There are actually, to date, there are a couple of locations that we've had complaints about operation. We actually have a camera watching the flashes again to make sure they're operating properly, and we can document if they're not. Again, we get calls from time to time. We can check on that. Our priority at this point, I've asked staff, as soon as this equipment starts coming in, let's hit those ones that we've got the complaints that we know is the oldest equipment, the least reliable equipment, and start bringing it online. Again, the equipment just was ordered, and in today's world, we just don't know how quickly some of that may come in. We've not been told it's going to be an extended period of time, but it's probably going to be at least a couple months, but get all this in and get it out in the field and get it operational.
Yeah, and also in that process, would you all be sure, positively sure that there's no obstruction from where the flashing light indicates before it gets to the radar detection of the traffic? Because I've heard complaints where, well, you can't see the lights and the signage is in the way of the lights, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that those blinking lights are 100% in the eyeballs of those drivers so that we don't hear those complaints. And I know I've had a complaint or two of that. So.
Yes, sir. We've heard a couple of those too, and actually in the process of moving a couple of signage locations now to make sure that one is not blocking the other in any shape, form, or fashion.
And I think that, you touched on the amount of money, where it's going, the projects we're trying to do. I think we need to get somehow to the public that we're not putting this money into the general fund to use for other city projects. It's going to be earmarked for public safety issues, for corrections. We have a public safety committee that's working diligently. I know I'm on it, the mayor's on it, to come up with ways to utilize those funds to improve the safety for the public. So we're not dipping into the general fund, or we're not putting this into the general fund to be used for other road projects or other things. And I think that's, people ask, like, where are you going to go with the $5 million? I mean, I don't know how many times we can explain over and over that what we're trying to use this for, but we truly we have to keep hitting on that, because we don't want them to think that this money is just being, used for other things, and we're trying to build the coffers up in our pockets here in the city, and that's not what we're trying to do. We're truly using this funding for safety for the public, and we will continue to use that. I'm sure I don't have to relay more than that to you and to the chief, but that's something that I keep hearing over and over. It's a lot you hear on the internet that keeps hitting us. Of course, there's always going to be the unhappy person that gets the ticket. I mean, I would be unhappy if I got one, but that's my stupidity if I get it. But we just need to do something to get this traffic to slow down in those areas that we got these detection systems up. And I'm hoping that we get those red light camera meters in. I know we're ready up on the north end with a couple of locations. Harborview Boulevard coming off 664 or 164, coming down to Harborview Boulevard is a disaster. You usually find one upside down, or you have a broadsided hit there. We need that camera diligently on there because the traffic coming out of that area, coming off that interstate, is just horrendous at that traffic light. So keep up what you're doing. I appreciate everything everybody's doing. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor Ward?
Yes, and I spoke to you about it, I just want to make sure loud and clear about, is a time period when the lights are off with no construction, 10, 11 o'clock at night, is, is free to drive more than 25?
So, sir, what I can tell you is the question always is, when are the camera systems operating?
Okay.
So the school camera systems are operating during the times of the day that school is taking in and closing and shutting down and students are leaving, as posted on those signs. Times outside of those signs, the cameras are not operating in the school zones. In the work zones, generally our work zones run from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays. Now, if there is a day that we have really bad weather and there's absolutely no work going on in the work zone, we do share that and we turn the cameras off during those periods of time, and certainly nights and weekends. But there are occasionally times, like on Holland Road, where we've had to work at night. And when we have people out working at night, the cameras are operational. Again, it's all about trying to keep the folks that are working in the highway safe and getting them home, along with the folks that are passing by. We don't want something to happen and they react and have a crash and then they don't make it home. So yes, sir, it's very clear when they're operational, when they're not. Anecdotally, I will tell you that we have seen these to be very effective. Oftentimes, not oftentimes, almost all the time, nights, days, and weekends, I see, especially on 58, I see traffic driving at a much slower rate, much more in tune with the traffic laws than what we've had in the past. But always obey the posted speed limits.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Well, I don't have that much. I was surprised at the number of court cases that people are going to court, challenging their tickets. I didn't realize it was that many people. I thought, they were just paying it. But with that number going to court, has anybody talked to the courts to find out the strain that that's putting on the court system? Anybody know that? Because that's something different, added on to what their daily documents are.
And I know that it's been flowing pretty smoothly going to court, because they have a specific day that they'll hear these cases, that they'll hear the camera cases, and they'll usually get them done first. But as far as the strain on the court, I can't speak of that, but it doesn't appear to be anything other than a normal court day. When they go in, that's I believe it was 1,000 or 1,100 or so contested out of 133,000. So it's really, in the whole scheme of things, a relatively small number.
Okay, I was just wondering with the amount of court cases that they have to hear, is any of that money should be directed to system and whatever, what they might have to extra put in there.
Yes, sir. That's a good point. Yes, sir.
So I would like for us to take a look at that and work with the courts to see about the amount of time or extra time that it takes them to go through this. Maybe some of that money should be directed to the courts to help them with whatever needs they might have. That's just a thought. I'll bring it back later.
Yes, sir. Mr. Bennett, also, one of the things that I have heard, again, anecdotally, I do not have actual numbers to back this up, is there was a much higher rate of challenging of these in court in the early days, and now there's a little bit of history, and folks are seeing how these are being treated by the court. That number is starting to decrease. So what the chief gave you there was the overall number since the creation of the project. We probably need to look at month by month how those numbers have gone.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Sir.
Mr. Manager?
Councilman Bennett, just to go back to your question on loading of the courts. Of course, we're heading into the operating budget time. And we'll wait to see conversations at that point with the courts on what they may or may not be seeing.
Councilman Rector?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Robert, just a couple of quick questions. On the cameras that are on the school buses, I believe you said they're on 61 of them?
51.
51. Do the routes that those buses take vary day to day so that, one day it might be going through Williamston, the next day a bus might be out on Old Mill Creek? Or the cameras that are on those buses, are they assigned to specific routes so that essentially only those routes are being enforced?
Certainly, I can't give you the day in and day out, so that I believe my understanding is generally these are fixed routes, and a bus runs the same route over and over again. There's certainly an expense to these. These cameras are about $499 a month to operate on each camera. So currently, we're investing almost $25,500 a month into this camera system. What we did in the beginning was we asked the school system, please evaluate the locations where you think you have the most need. Where's your high speeds? Because again, somebody running past a bus on a highway is much different than somebody running past a bus in a neighborhood street. Evaluate those, evaluate where your drivers are saying they're having the most violations. And the school system actually picked where to put these and have deployed them thus. So I've actually talked to them about the feasibility of trying to move some buses around. If they got buses that are not really having any violations, maybe we need to shift that bus to another route, like you said, to get somewhere else. What's really interesting, the number of violations on the buses is surprisingly low.
We're good.
There's quite a few violations that are recorded, but by the time it goes through the process of being reviewed both by the company operating the system and by the police department, those numbers go down dramatically. Like in the month of December, we actually had 17 violations that we sent citations out for. That generated $4,250. But yet we paid almost $25,000 to operate the system. So at this point, the rest of the system, the other camera systems, are helping to subsidize and keep the bus systems going. The bus system is not a cash neutral. We're actually subsidizing that. But again, that's part of what the whole program is about. It's an overall safety program that we're trying to make everybody on the streets safer, and certainly our children are the most precious cargo we have out there. So again, we are subsidizing and keeping that going. It's a good program. As we go forth, the police department and I are going to participate with a program with the school bus drivers in the very near future. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we're seeing in the videos as to why the citations may not be making it all the way through to actually getting a ticket issued. A lot of that has to do with the state law says you can't pass a stopped school bus. When the school bus is coming to a stop, if they turn the lights on early, the red lights, and the school bus is still moving, anybody that passes that bus is technically not in violation, and those are getting thrown out. So again, we think some of this may be educational on the part of the bus drivers, that there may be a few more violators out there we need to catch and try to change their behavior. But again, it's educational for the drivers also, for the school bus drivers, and we're working on that.
Good. So going back to my original question, if the school system determines that a camera, that a bus needs to change the route, they have the ability, I guess, to do that. If a driver says, I'm, for whatever reason, I'm getting people passing me and I don't have a camera on my bus, the school system, I guess they have a way to react to that.
Yes, sir. So when we originally started the system, we deployed 50 cameras. And shortly after we got started, we had one come back and said, hey, we got one more right here we're really concerned about. Can we add another one? We did. One of the issues is, and one of the things I learned in trying to deal with this, I said, well, why don't we just shuffle the buses around to different routes? Like so many things, the people that drive those buses are very much, that's my bus, I drive, and I don't want somebody else to drive it. So, when you start talking about shifting equipment around, it gets a little bit more challenging. Because people take ownership of that, and they take pride in their equipment, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
There's certainly these things are physically mounted to the school bus. They're built in there. There's a lot of time and money invested in installing them, so we can't just say, well, we'll just take it out of this bus and move it to another bus. Okay. So again, we are looking at that with them, though.
And then the red light cameras, and you were talking about work zone at night, the cameras can pick something up, can pick up a license plate at night?
Yes, sir, it's infrared.
Infrared, awesome, okay. Then one more, you were talking about, if the school had a delayed opening and whatnot, and their opening time does not match what is on that sign, the cameras aren't cut on. Does that essentially mean that if for whatever reason, because of a snow or a storm or whatever, and there's a 2-hour delay, or they get out at noon, that when they're leaving or arriving to school at the delayed opening and then leaving at an early dismissal, there's essentially no enforcement?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a little bit hesitant to make that because, again, we want people to obey our traffic laws at all time for safety. But yes, sir, we are not operating the systems. If it's a day for some reason our school system gets canceled altogether, again, we notify the company, we turn the system off, and we do not issue citations during those times.
Yeah.
So again, on social media, there's been a lot of comments made. Oh, I got one at midnight in front of such and such school. We are yet to have a valid person come back to us and say, bring us a ticket and show us a violation like that. Because again, we're open. If we have something not operating properly, we'll process the ticket and correct the situation. But yet we are yet to see most all of these violations that are saying, well, I didn't do this, or it happened at an odd time or something. We do not have anybody actually come forward yet with a valid ticket that can show us that was done improperly.
Okay. And then finally, to sort of piggyback on something that Councilman Fawcett brought up, in terms of how we utilize the money that is collected, I think we need to be careful with how we define things, because the term public safety can be pretty broadly applied. I mean, what I don't want to do is see it turn into the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, where basically everything that Congress wants to do, they can throw it under the Commerce Clause. So I just, we told the public that the money was going to be used to enhance public safety, and I think we need to make sure that that's where it is spent. So,
Mr. Manager, if you could address that.
If I may, as we work through our budget this coming year, we're going to have line items in a few of the departments that call it community safety.
Okay.
So that can be anything that is safety generated. Some project could be a road improvement where we have a crosswalk, lights in the darkened area, or in talking as we work through the Public Safety Committee, we could be talking about some of our safety issues related to blight. But the key is that it all will be used for safety for our community and for our residents.
Well, and that's what we promised the public. So I'm glad to hear that.
Council, any other questions or comments? Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Robert, for your presentation. Just a couple of things. Believe me, I've probably addressed more speed camera questions, comments. I mean, just as recently as this morning, I had somebody show up with 2 citations that they'd received down the street in a school zone. So we had to address those, and I got my car, came back, took a couple of pictures, and by the time I got back, we fixed it. But there's a lot of misinformation out there, as Mr. Lewis alluded to. Number one, when this initiative was passed by council, it was a unanimous vote, and it didn't involve any money. There was no income mentioned, and it really doesn't make any difference if there wasn't any income, because the key was that it was guaranteed to the city that it would be revenue neutral. There's a set contract, a set number of dollars, and I'm just going to use a round number and say it's $100,000 a month. It's based on how many cameras per camera. I've read the whole contract. What the responsibility of the contractor is in regards to the equipment and ensuring that it's calibrated properly in the collection process. So from our standpoint, it was a way to enhance safety on our roads. And for anybody who's been on the roads, I can't find anybody who can argue with me that the majority of the population adheres to the speed limit. Because most of the time, if you're doing 10 over, you're probably going to get run over, especially in some of the areas, especially on 58. Numerous occasions, Councilman Johnson talking about how he couldn't even get out of his place. We've got more truck traffic coming through. There's a lot of trucks being cited. So the dollars, for one thing, were not a consideration. Yes, we have, and once the contract, the way a contract reads is a set dollar amount, and then the initial citations income is used to satisfy the contract. If it's a $100,000 contract and they only collect 90 grand, well, they're just short 10 grand and it's on them, it ain't on us. If the contract's 100 grand and collect 110, then we get the amount over and above what it takes to satisfy the contract. By statute, it cannot be based on per citation. Nobody gets paid per citation, so there's not an incentive there to run it up. I know in the situations that I've encountered that I have referred to the manager, to the city staff, everybody's been very responsive, and we've resolved all of them that I know of. And there were a couple of incidents where there was a legit mistake. I mean, there was one where the license plate reader misread a number on the license plate, and the constituent did have an issue getting through, which is a problem, but the main thing is he got to us, and it was fixed in about 12 hours. I mean, just that quick. So staff has been very, very, very receptive to ensuring that we assist our citizens anytime that they think that there's an issue. What I suggest to everyone, though, is, before they bring it to me, look at your citation. It has a picture, it has a time, it has a date, and it has a time. And once you do that, if there is a point of contention, if it's a point of contention somebody else is driving the car, it's one form. You fill out one affidavit saying it wasn't me. It was Robert Lewis, and here's his name and number, and he'll get them all. No, I didn't say that. Or if I'm going to pay for that one. Oh, it's just a joke. His face is turned red. Okay, the other one is possibly they read a license plate on a car that you don't own anymore. You are no longer the legal owner of that car. It's one piece of paper, it's done, it's disputed, it's taken care of. There are ways to go to court. It's not your typical court case. These are not criminal violations. You don't need a lawyer. There's no conspiracy theory out there. There's a lot about constitutionality and due process. These are civil violations. Just like if you go through the tunnel and you don't pay your toll, you're going to get a ticket based on your license plate. They really don't care who was in the car when you went through the toll. You can say, I wasn't driving. Well, it's your car that went through the toll. You're the one that's going to get the citation. And I can say 3 words. I mean, look at those numbers. I mean, it is, I'm looking at December's numbers, and I knew they'd been steadily coming down, but when you look at December, I mean, we went from thousands of violations to hundreds. I mean, this is substantial. So some of the numbers that, that some folks like to talk about, just, that are high, this was based on early generation in those first couple of 2-3 months. It's not going to be this kind of money. I mean, it may be something, and if it is, it is, but it's absolutely working. When you can go from 30,000 to less than 1,000, I mean, it's doing what it's supposed to do. And I've seen it everywhere that I go when I hit a zone. I mean, people slow down. There's no question about it. They are very conscious of those particular areas, and that's what we want. In regards to the money, I've had more conversations with the manager than I'd like to think about, and he has come up with a way for this money to be part of the budget in this community safety fund to be allocated to particular departments based on what we feel like the need would be, with the idea that how it is spent will come from 2 entities. Basically, our Public Safety Committee, which at our Public Safety Committee, virtually every department head and organization throughout the city that is directly concerned with safety, from the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office to the Police Department, the Fire Department, the Manager's Office, Public Works, the Sheriff's Department, the jail. Everyone who has an interest and a responsibility for public safety will be in one room at one time. And it's amazing how much can get done in a short period of time when you have that sort of group in a room, where the fire chief can bring up something. It was his idea on the mile markers. Where the police chief can bring up something. It was his idea on the lighting. Where we can talk about blight. That actually came through the manager's office, because we had there's a few issues out there that require demolition of buildings, but where does the money come from? So that's one piece. But the important piece is not up and running yet, and that's the public input. The public input for safety. We're going to have, once we get our portal up through this Public Safety Committee, it will allow our citizens to go online and make suggestions as to what they would like to see in their neighborhood, what they think will work in their neighborhood. And it could be putting up a light. It could be taking down a dilapidated structure. It could be some additional signage someplace. This is the type of input that we need. And by having this money set aside, we will be able to respond instantly, if you will, because those requests, the way I envision it, I think I got it right, those requests will come through the Public Safety Committee. The Public Safety will take a look at it, make our recommendations, goes back to the manager, and the manager will come back or take action based on, what is there. Now, keep in mind, this does not preclude or substitute for what is already gets addressed every day. I mean, if there's an issue with public safety, we're addressing it now. If it's a matter of taking a house down, filling a pothole, whatever needs to be done, we are doing that, and that's not going to stop. But this is just something that will allow for a better response, an immediate response, to address those safety issues. And by safety, it could be, it's also issues that are going to deter crime all the way through our city. So I just want everybody to know that that's the plan. And I don't see any reason why we're going to vary from that, Mr. Manager.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, if I may, Mayor, is that what we'd be looking at is non-recurring costs.
Correct.
Because you have a declining revenue stream. And what we would be looking at is what you have the previous fiscal year, so you're not anticipating funds that you may not receive. So that's how it's thought through with working with the budget officer, is that you would look where you're at the end of a fiscal year. You look at that funding, and then you allocate it on what projects may, in the different departments, that we deem to be appropriate, but they should not be reoccurring costs associated with it, because you do not have potentially a reoccurring revenue, especially if you are construction lanes, or they say 58's done, 460's done, and we have Shoulders Hill Road, but that's at an intersection. You may not have that type of revenue. So we need to really think through this as we implement it.
Right, and I think the manager, in speaking to staff, I think this is an excellent way to handle it. The money that goes in this is money that's already collected. So just like you mentioned, we can't create anything that's going to depend on this revenue stream, because it may just dry up one day. But until it does, we want this money to be readily available and get back into the communities that, we're charged to serve. And I think this is an excellent way to do it. You look at the numbers, 80-some% that individuals or entities that are receiving the citations are not Suffolk residents. A lot of them are the trucks that are blowing through, and that's a big concern. So like I said, it's been a little rocky to start with. When I say a little rocky, it's just because there's so much misinformation out there. But I am very satisfied with where we are right now, and as to its effectiveness, and also how we're going to plan on using the revenues. So with that being said, that's enough for cameras for tonight. I haven't talked about cameras since yesterday, or since this morning, so I want to stay fresh. Anybody else have any questions or comments before we move on? If not, we do have a couple of motions this evening. One's a motion to schedule a public hearing to be held on February 7th, 2024, to receive public comment on a second amendment to the Whaleyville Communications Tower Lease and Cellco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless, and a motion would be in order. Councilman Williams.
Move to approve.
Got a motion to approval. Councilman Williams. Councilman Fawcett.
Second his motion.
Second from Councilman Fawcett. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
Motion is approved by a vote of 7-0.
Our next motion is a motion to schedule a city council work session for Wednesday, February 7th, 2024 at 4 p.m. Unless canceled, the motion would be in order. Councilman Fawcett.
Move to approve, Mayor.
Got a motion for approval. Councilman Fawcett. Councilman Johnson.
Second.
Second from Councilman Johnson. Is there a second? Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
Motion is approved by a vote of 7-0.
We'll now move to non-agenda speakers. Madam Clerk, do we have any non-agenda speakers? And if so, please explain the guidelines.
We do have non-agenda speakers this evening. Each person participating under the item of business entitled non-agenda speakers shall limit their service to their remarks to the services, policies, and affairs of city government and shall be permitted 5 minutes for the purpose of presenting his or her matter. Speakers appearing before City Council will not be permitted to participate in the following activities: to campaign for public office, engage in personal attacks, promote private business ventures, or use profanity. Speakers who violate these rules will be declared out of order by the presiding officer and will immediately yield the floor and be seated. Our first non-agenda speaker this evening is William Goodman, 511 Reed Court, representing self regarding relocation of traffic line. Is Mr. Goodman present?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Do I have to repeat my name again? Okay, good. I'm here tonight because of the fact that I'm not a resident in the particular borough, but I do own some property in the borough involved. I think it's the Whaleyville Borough. I have spoken with the councilman for that borough in reference to this problem. It is a unsafe, which I consider a situation at the intersection of South Saratoga Street and Welland Street. Because the old junkyard that's located there, where the intersection is, there's a chain link fence. There is a stop sign there, and there's a whole line there. The traffic that's situated at the whole line cannot clearly see the traffic that's approaching from the north side on Welland Street without crossing the whole line. So consequently, if the traffic that's holding there across the whole line, trying to see what's coming from the right side, and there's an accident, that puts that pedestrian in fault. According to the regulations that I'm familiar with, you're not to move across that line until the way is clear. And that fence there has some plastic in it, so you can't even see through the chain link fence with traffic approaching you from the right side. I feel as though that something should be done about it and could be done about it. It's on private property based on the information I got. And there's a metal barrier around the fence right there where the whole line is. So I would like to see that situation corrected before we have an accident. So if it at all possible, I would like to see if someone that's responsible for this situation, such as the whole line itself. Now, if the city has to buy a couple of feet from the junkyard or whoever owns the property, I think it's well worth it. A person's life, to me, is very valuable, and that can really happen. So I waited here all this time because otherwise I'd have got up and walked away. I'm an old fella now. I had to go to bed early. But I felt it was very important that all of you were made aware of this situation. So I would appreciate anything or any action that's taken in reference to this matter. Are there any questions? I think I have some answers if you have any. No questions? Thank you for your attention, and I hope we can get some assistance on this matter. Thank you very much.
Our final speaker is Philip Burns, 2210 East Washington Street, representing self regarding the police department.
Yeah, I'm here because I have an issue with what happened last year in September. I called the police because someone shot out the rear windows of my Chevrolet Colorado. They responded in due time, and then 3 weeks later they called me. But in between the time, October 7th, I had an accidental discharge of my firearm inside my apartment, and I shot myself in my finger. So I go to the first precinct, I talk to an officer in the parking lot, and I report the incident before I go to the ER to get stitched up. And when I go to the ER, the detective shows up and they want to do a report. They want to confiscate my firearm. I'm like, okay, how long will you have my weapon? He said 7 to 10 days. I'm like, okay, fine. So I sign a permission slip. So while I'm at the hospital, they go into my apartment. I come home, and the next day, a detective calls me regarding the shooting involving my truck. And I said, well, I'm in the middle of another issue with your department regarding my gun. And I said, can you call me back in about 5 days? She never returned my call. And I wanted to find out if they actually used that trailer camera, because it's like right there in front of my truck, because 3 kids actually walked by, and I'm smoking, and I go toward the back of the property, and they were shooting at me. And I want to know why these kids have not been identified, because I think under civil law, I should be able to go after the parents with the $495 I had to pay to fix my windows. Thankfully, they didn't hit the frame of my truck. It was a through and through my glass, and where I usually stand to smoke is right there between my truck and my neighbor's car. And the bullet went through both mine and broke my neighbor's van window. And it's like, I felt like they were more concerned about violating my Second Amendment rights and taking my gun than they are about capturing these 3 kids that don't even live at Hoffler and are running around gangbanging on Washington Street. So I want to know what's going on. Why was I treated like a criminal when I follow the rules? I know that the hospital has to report, but I was like, I can go to the police department en route to the hospital. It wasn't like I was gushing or my finger wasn't like falling off. And I tried to go ask for the police, and they would always try and say, he's not here, he's not here. One time I felt threatened because I'd go in and say, I want to speak to the chief about my firearm being returned, and here come 3 officers. One at my 9 o'clock, one at noon, and one at my 3 o'clock position. There was no one behind me because there was a door, and I felt like they were trying to entrap me. And I was like, officer, I have a right to stand my ground. Do not encroach on my personal space. I have a right to get my gun back, because they were trying to say that they could charge me criminally because I had my finger on my gun like you're supposed to going down the breech. And when I went to put it in the holster, what happened was the holster fell off my pants. It wasn't clipped. And so when I went down to pick it up, the gun discharged and hit my finger. But I don't like being treated like a criminal when the criminals are actually out there running amok on East Washington. And I wanted an audience with the chief of police, but the two people that work in the front area were always like, oh, he can't talk to you, blah, blah, and they would try to run me out of the building. Well, we have a right to regress and approach our government, including law enforcement, because I told them, you are now in violation of Article 42 of U.S. Code 1983, and they went, like, you don't know your rights? I'm like, yes, I do know my rights. I'm a veteran. I didn't take an oath to defend the Constitution without knowing the Constitution. You have a right to keep and bear arms unless you are a felon. And it's like, why was I being treated like a criminal over an accidental discharge of my firearm within my apartment? No one heard it. So no one called 911. I went and did the right thing, and I was being criminalized. Yet the kids who shot up my truck are still out there. That's all I wanted to know was, what can I do to get help from the police when I try and call them? That's all I have to say. Thanks.
That concludes our speakers, Mayor.
Okay, at this time, we'll ask if Media and Community Relations Director Jennifer Moore has any announcements.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, City Manager. There it goes. Exciting news from Suffolk Fire and Rescue. Fire Chief Michael Baraki was appointed to the Public Safety and Homeland Security E911 Services Board by Governor Glenn Youngkin. The purpose of the board is to provide support and assist statewide public safety centers in the provision of 911 operations and services, including through provision of funding and the development of best practices. The board is also responsible for the planning, promotion, and assistance in the statewide development, deployment, and maintenance of emergency services. Congratulations, Chief Baraki. The Economic Development Department is excited to announce that Walker's Market is now open for business. The ribbon was cut on January 13th on this new family-owned convenience store aimed at providing a new shopping option for the downtown Suffolk area. Walker's Market will provide a variety of goods to patrons, including fresh produce, grocery items, and other convenience items. Governor Glenn Youngkin announced this week that Solenis, a leading global producer in specialty chemicals for water-extensive industries, will invest $193 million to expand its operation in the city of Suffolk. The company will build a new 80,000-square-foot production facility, packaging facility, and tank farm, and add a new rail spur to accommodate the production of their polymer product, which are used in the paper and cardboard manufacturing process. Suffolk successfully competed with Georgia and Texas for this project, which will create 34 new jobs. For more information, visit solenis.com. Suffolk Public Library wants kids to increase their confidence and their reading skills through the BARKS program, and they invite you to join them on Saturday, January 20th at 2 p.m. to read to therapy dogs, who will listen as you read them your favorite books. Registration is required for this event, so for more information, visit suffolkpubliclibrary.com. And the Tourism Division is excited to share that the Winter Farmers Market is back on February 3rd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Suffolk Visitor Center Pavilion. Subsequent markets will be held on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th Saturdays of each month through the end of April. The market offers an array of fresh local produce, meat, eggs, honey, baked goods, soaps, candles, jewelry, and so much more. For more information, visit SuffolkVAFarmersMarket.com. And the Parks and Rec Department reminds you that the Bon Secours Caravan Mobile Clinic will be at the East Suffolk Rec Center on the first Wednesday of every month, with the next visit being February 7th. They will offer free medical services that provide general medical care to uninsured adults and children. Appointments begin at 8:30 a.m. To schedule an appointment, visit bonsaccord.com. And the Suffolk Office on Youth is excited to present an inclusive cooking course for children ages 6 and up. This 2-week program invites individuals with disabilities to explore recipes in a fun and welcoming environment. Foodies aims to empower aspiring chefs while fostering self-confidence and friendships. The cost of the event is $30 and will start on February 6th at the Planners Club from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. For more information, visit suffolkva.us. And lastly, on your screen are the various ways for residents to stay connected to the city of Suffolk. Thank you and have a good night.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Moore. We'll now move on to announcements from City Council. Councilman Rector.
Hang on, I have something else under new business. Remember?
Oh, we absolutely skip new business. Madam Clerk, I stand corrected here. Do we have any additions to tonight's agenda?
No additions from my end.
No addition from your end. Do we have any other new business that will require action to City Council for consideration? Councilman Rector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Evidently, from time to time, a business gets a business license and should probably have also applied for a conditional use permit based on the zoning for where that business is, but it kind of falls under the radar a little bit. So, and then it comes before us, or it gets pointed out, and it creates an issue for the business. So what I'd like to do is make a motion and move that the Planning Commission consider an amendment to the UDO to provide a process remedying notices of violation for not having a CUP that allows the use to continue if the building official and fire marshal certify that the continued use will not harm public health and safety, and the property owner applies for a CUP within 30 days of the notice and receives approval within 150 days of the application.
Okay, we got a motion from Councilman Rector. Councilman Fawcett.
Mayor, I'd like to second that motion of his.
We got a second from Councilman Fawcett. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
Motion is approved by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, we will now move on to announcements from City Council. Councilman Rector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be fairly brief. I attended
Who laughed?
I did attend the opening along with you, and I believe Councilman Bennett, of the opening of Walker's Market on Washington Street in the old Penner's Florist building, and he does offer an eclectic, to say the least, variety of goods that may or may not be available, at any other little local market. So hopefully he's going to do well and thrive. I think over time he's said that his offering of merchandise will change as the request and demands of the neighborhood dictate. One of the things that he does have is a huge variety of fresh herbs, not fresh herbs, dried herbs, as my wife keeps correcting me for saying. So if you're looking for some Moroccan mint, 530 West Washington Street is the place to go get it. Then briefly, I'm just going to touch on this because I know that Councilman Fawcett wants to talk a little bit more about it, but he and I did attend the change of command for the Joint Forces 2nd Fleet Combined Joint Operations from the Sea and the Center of Excellence over at the Norfolk Naval Station. And one of the things that we did get to do after the thing was to take a brief tour of the aircraft carrier, and I had never been on an aircraft carrier. And we went up on the flight deck. He was explaining to us about operations on the flight deck, and I looked down, and I found a challenge coin for the USS Truman. And I offered it up to the lieutenant commander that was doing the guided tour for me, and he said no. He said, basically, somebody else's loss is your gain. We want you to keep the coin, and we also thank you for clearing the flight deck of any debris. So anyway, I didn't realize how critical it was that there is no debris on the flight deck, but evidently it is. And then Monday, along with the mayor and Councilman Person Barlow, and who else was with us? Anyway, we attended the Martin Luther King celebration that was held at Nansemond River High School, and it was a good event. Unfortunately, it was punctuated near the end as one of the presenters had a little bit of an episode with his diabetes, But anyhow, I understand he's doing well. And then I would like to congratulate Chief Baraki on his appointment from the governor, and then also thank Salinas for continuing their investment in the city of Suffolk. And then finally, what I'd like to do is just wish my son a happy birthday on his 29th birthday. And with that, I'll say good night.
Councilman Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would like to let me offer my condolences to Vice Mayor Ward. He lost his brother, and just want you to know that our heart and our prayers goes out to you, and anything that we can do, please let us know.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'd like to thank Mr. Goodman for coming out, and we're very, very familiar with the, I call it the Falk, the peak. City manager and I have had conversations about that piece of property, and he's correct. It's an accident waiting to happen, and hopefully we can move on that, maybe get something done. My word for the month of January is liberation, the act of setting someone free from imprisonment, slavery, or oppression. And with that, I'd like to say good night.
Councilman Fawcett.
Thank you, Mayor. As our colleague, Mr. Rector, had stated, we did go up on the USS Harry Truman for the Second Fleet. I remember Second Fleet at one time had been disbanded for a number of years, and back, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, they brought Second Fleet back. And I had a chance to go to it when they reestablished it. But it was probably one of the most powerful ceremonies I think I've seen in quite some time. We did have the Honorable Carlos Del Toro, the Secretary of Navy, was with us on that particular day. We had the General 4-star from the European Command there. We had the Admiral from the U.S. Command Forces Fleet here, along with the change of command for Vice Admiral Daniel Dreyer, and he was relieved, and the new Vice Admiral is Douglas Perry. It was a great ceremony. I had the privilege to go up on a carrier. You know, I've been on many a carrier in my time, but to get John to go up on the carrier, to be able to go through and go up on the flight deck and go into the Truman Room, and it was just a great afternoon. We were well presented and treated by the crew, and we couldn't ask for anything anymore. But John did bribe the captain of the ship, as we were having a conversation with him, to be sure that I got a challenge coin, because he felt bad that he found that one on the flight deck. But as the captain says, there should be nothing on the flight deck or like that is called FOD, which would be a problem with aircraft operations, and they were doing testing to the catapults, which we got to see, and they were hot. So that was pretty cool. I want to give Fire Chief Baraki a shout out for getting selected for the E911 Services Board. As we know, Salinas putting $193 million back into the city of Suffolk, and we competed with 2 other localities around, and that's a big deal. I think Salinas is a top-notch group. I got to hear their presentation at the EDA, and it was just, they gave a good presentation. Mr. Ward, I'm sorry for the loss of your family member. My condolences go to you. And I would also like to take a moment to give my condolences to the Chris Jones family, who was our councilman, mayor, and our delegate in Richmond. He chaired the Appropriations Committee. He lost his wife at a very early age. Her name was Karen Jones. Just a wonderful, wonderful woman, and he is just a first-class guy anyway. but my condolences do go out to the Jones family as well as the Ward family. So with that, I will say good night. See you next time.
Councilman Bennett.
Thank you. Well, this is where do I need to start? I'm going to start with you, though, Robert, mess with you a little bit. I'm glad that you got your signs up there tonight, so I hope Andy Fox is paying attention so that he'll see that you was in regulation with your signs. He was saying you were not, so he had a lot of, so I started to stop you back then, but I said I'm going to laugh about it later on. But I don't know who invited Andy over, but they should have gotten with you before they made the presentation out there on the public. But I do appreciate you getting that straight. There's a lot of false information, I think, has been actually put out there about the cameras and whatnot, and that's the reason why I think most of us get emails, calls, and conversations quite a bit about it. But anyway, just because of false information, bad information putting out there. So I'm going to see Andy next time I see him. I'm going to tell him, remind him of it. Also, congratulations to Chief Barker. And the Walker's Market, I know that family. I knew his grandfather and all them. So it's a hard-working family. It's a family business, and I'm sure they'll do well if you take anything that is like his grandfather. Some of you might know his grandfather was Sherman Hill. He used to be a mechanic and ran a couple of service stations. So he's a great person here in Suffolk when he was here. Also, I'd like to say condolences to Chris Jones, and I served on council with him some years before he went to Richmond and the loss of his wife, and I just want to say my condolences to the family. And to you, Vice Mayor Ward, I'm sorry to hear about your loss of your brother. First I heard of it, but you have my condolences. And I know it's not something easy. No one looks for this time of year to have so much going on in their lives, but we have to say prayed up. That's what we have to do. So that is about, I think that's enough for me. Thank you, and y'all have a great evening.
All righty, Councilman Johnson.
Very brief, because all of my points have already been taken, so we're good. Congratulations, Chief Baraki. Thank you to the city staff. It's been a tremendous busy week for all of us, I think, and staff has done what it always does and provided us with lots of useful information. I appreciate it. Police Department, too. We've had a good week. Lou, I'm sorry about your brother. It hits all of us at some point. And I also was going to say how sorry we are for the loss of Chris Jones, his wife, Karen. If you remember, Chris was our tennis shoe. He was my idol. He wore tennis shoes to the council meetings, and I think that's something we need to start back. But it's really sad for him, and but we are thinking about you and your family. And with that, I'll say good night.
Vice Mayor Ward.
Yes, I'd like to thank Councilman Williams for his support. He called me every day to make sure I was all right, and thank him so much for asking questions. Even he called when I was in New York at the time. So I really thank you, Councilman Williams, for your support. I thank all the people that called me up, sent me cards, and let him know that I really appreciate it. And he was in New York, but they knew him a little here. But I think that. Also like to thank the mayor for his support. He's always there when with that need. So I thank you, Mayor, for your support. And I also like to let you know that his homegoing service is in Carpew in Portsmouth at 12 o'clock, and he'll be laid to rest in Meadowbrook next to my mother. So also have my condolences for Chris Jones and his family. With that, I would say, I want to congratulate the fire chief also. Thank you so much. God bless.
Okay, I'll be brief. Once again, I want to start off congratulating Chief Baraki on his appointment by the governor. I too want to offer my condolences to, I don't have to To Vice Mayor Ward, I'm just putting it out there because, we talk all the time. Matter of fact, I've been trying to get a hold of him. I don't know, what time did you get home last night?
9.
Got home about 9 o'clock. So, I mean, he was on the road all day coming from New York, so I know that was a fun trip. I do want to offer my sincere condolences to Chris Jones and the Jones family on the passing of his wife, Karen. I met Karen several times. And I think if there's one word that would describe her, it would be gracious. I think she was a very gracious person. That's what hit me this morning. Sum it up in one word. She was devoted. And another thing is, she could just light up a room with her smile. She always had that smile. And you can tell it was a genuine smile. Sometimes people just smile to be smiling and they turn around and they're not smiling anymore. You could tell that it was genuine when it came from her. I know she'll be missed by all those who had the good fortune to know her. I think there's a visitation Friday. I know the city put out some information Friday evening, maybe from 6 to 8 at Sturdivant, and at 2 p.m. on Saturday at Ebenezer, which I believe is in Eclipse. Not much going on in the last week or so. The manager and I attended another regional meeting, mayors and CAOs, to discuss addressing violence and possible regional solutions, how we could join together. And, we got a few presentations and threw around a few more ideas. So hopefully we'll be able to incorporate some of that. I too went to Walker's Market, and I wish them much success. I mean, it's tough opening up an independent business in today's market, so hopefully they will do well. I wish them much success. I did attend the MLK citywide event at Nansemond River High School. I was trying to think of something to say for a quote and what have you for this evening. And I've attended quite a few MLK celebrations, and it seems like at every one of these celebrations, we have a hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And it's really the only time I hear it is at a MLK celebration. So I said, well, let me do a little bit of research. I mean, you sit there and you look at it and you kind of give it a little lip service and you might sing along. But I started looking at the words and see kind of what jumped out at me. I did a little history first. It was written by James Weldon Johnson, which is on this little form right here, but it was written in 1900, 124 years ago. And it was written as a poem, but it became a hymn, and it was adopted by the NAACP in 1919 as the organization's official anthem. So I started to look at a little bit more of the content, take the content a little more seriously, and I got to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th and 8th line, I think it is, of the hymn. The 7th line says, and this is going to be my quote of the night, but the 7th line reads, "Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us." The next line says, "Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us." So we're reflecting on the past, but we're talking about the hope of the present. This was in 1900. Look what was going on in 1900 versus 2024. And in 1900, we were talking about hope that the present has brought us. So there is hope because we have indeed come a long way. But we need to be cognizant of where we've come from and be vigilant that we continue to move forward. But we have indeed come a long way. And with that being said, I am going to wish everyone a fond adieu and ask for a motion to adjourn. Councilman Johnson?
So moved.
Get a motion to adjourn from Councilman Fawcett, Councilman Johnson, Councilman Fawcett.
Yep.
Second by Councilman Fawcett. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, council members prepare to vote. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, please record the vote.
The motion is approved by a vote of 7 to 0.
This meeting stands adjourned.